I already had a beloved, but with the issuance of an imperial decree, I became the empress. The day before entering the palace, my beloved invited me out for a drink, saying he wanted to see me one last time. I drank the peach blossom wine he handed me, and immediately, blood flowed uncontrollably from my lower body, his once tender and affectionate face instantly filled with disgust and hatred. Do you really think I love you? Only when you can no longer bear children will my URAO become the most favored woman in the harem. The URAO he mentioned is the name of the current imperial consort. The wine was laced with a full dose of safflower, leaving me unable to conceive again and causing me to suffer from persistent bleeding. After entering the palace, the emperor discovered my hidden ailment and flew into a rage, immediately granting me a cup of poisoned wine and slaughtering my entire Shan family for the crime of deceiving the sovereign. Once again I opened my eyes, and I had returned to the day my beloved invited me for a drink. Hello, everyone, welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now the story begins. The young man before me had dashing, handsome features, with sharp brows and starry eyes, his sorrowful gaze fixed on me as he handed over that cup of peach blossom brew. Yunshu, this peach blossom brew, I brewed it especially for you. I had hoped to celebrate at our engagement banquet after my coming-of-age ceremony, but now it seems that once you enter the palace gates, it's as deep as the sea, there will be no chance after all. I was momentarily stunned. The concerned face before me overlapped with the one full of disgust in my memory, and I instantly felt a shiver of fear. And that cup of wine in his hand was nothing less than a death warrant for me and the entire Shan family. I fought back the nausea, covering my mouth and nose with a handkerchief, and spoke softly, "Young Master Xie, since this wine was prepared for the engagement banquet, if it's missed, then it's missed. I am already the empress chosen by His Majesty. Young Master Xie, you should know to keep your distance." Then, I subtly signaled to Zizhu behind me with a glance, understanding my meaning. Zizhu quickly took my hand and led me away. "Miss, it's all my fault. I forgot that the boxes to be taken into the palace still need you to check them personally. Please go and take a look quickly." I stood up and walked away directly, leaving him with a stunned expression. In my previous life, after being given the poisoned wine, I desperately kowtowed to the emperor, begging for mercy. The reason was simple: I wasn't afraid of death myself. But I only wished for the emperor to spare the hundreds of people in my Shan family. I banged my head against the wall, explaining over and over again. I said it was because I had eaten something wrong that my health had been ruined, but the emperor, seeing the bloodstains on my nightgown, was convinced that I had lost my purity before entering the palace, that my body was unclean. He was convinced that my father had sent me into the palace to humiliate him. The emperor said he detested the prime minister's control over him. He was the son of heaven. After all, when he was young, it was natural for his father to assist in governing the country. But now he was long capable of handling matters on his own. It was his father who had overstepped his authority. So, it turned out he had long held a grudge against my father, the prime minister. But if that's the case, why did you praise my father so highly in front of the court officials, saying, "The nation cannot go a single day without its prime minister"? Beside him, Shu Yueruo covered her mouth with a light laugh, adding fuel to the fire. "I've heard that before Shen Yunshu entered the palace, she had a handsome sweetheart. As for what happened behind the scenes, Your Majesty, who can say for sure?" Thus, amidst the emperor's fury and the imperial consort's mockery, my mouth was forcibly pried open by the palace attendants. A cup of poisoned wine was poured down my throat. The pain made my hairpins scatter in disarray, and my robes were soaked with sweat. In excruciating agony, I soon died. My aunt, the Empress Dowager, arrived a step too late. By the time she rushed to the scene, the emperor and the consort had long since departed. The palace attendants were dragging my corpse away, intending to discard it in the mass graves overnight. Her eyes filled with tears as she threw herself onto my corpse, wailing loudly, "Yunshu, how foolish you are. How could you and your father treat the royal family's dignity with such disrespect? Actions speak louder than intentions. No matter how deeply you loved your sweetheart, how could you commit such a foolish act as engaging in a secret affair?" Unfortunately, I was already dead by then and couldn't clear my name. My soul hovered before her, desperately pleading my case. "Aunt, Yunshu did not." After drinking Xie Yanji's wine that day, I bled uncontrollably, and he had long since disappeared. The physician treated me all night and said I would never be able to conceive again in this lifetime. The most concerning symptom was the continuous bleeding, but the physician said he could prescribe medicine to temporarily stop it, and I had to enter the palace early the next morning. My parents truly had no other choice. or it would have been the grave crime of defying the imperial decree. We had planned to inform the emperor later that my body was too damaged to bear children. A cup of tea from the palace made before serving the bed directly caused me to bleed uncontrollably again, which finally aroused the emperor's suspicion. But no matter how I explained, my aunt refused to listen. My spirit drifted through the palace, and a few days later, the emperor used this incident to make a big issue out of it. He claimed that the empress lacked virtue and was unfit to be a model for the nation. The Shen family deliberately intended to humiliate the imperial family. An act of great treason. With the issuance of an imperial decree, not a single one of the hundreds in the Shen family was spared, and the ground was soaked in blood. At this moment, I sat in the sedan chair on my way back to the residence, the embroidered handkerchief in my hand nearly torn to shreds. I knew all too well that since I had enjoyed the glory of the Shen clan, I must bear the price it brought. In my previous life, I never wanted to see Xie Yanji again, seeing him beg me so humbly. I didn't want to break his heart. Xie Yanji treated me exceptionally well. He was the perfect husband in my heart. That day, he poured me a cup of peach blossom wine he had brewed himself and fed it to me. In his anticipation, I thought, drinking this cup of wine would be like severing all ties with him. But as soon as I drank it, his expression changed. The deep affection from moments ago vanished in an instant, replaced by a gaze full of cruelty and heartlessness. Seeing me clutch my abdomen in agony, he laughed heartily and revealed the truth. I was good to you before because I had long heard that the late emperor secretly left an edict, stating that upon your coming of age, you would be made empress. Originally, I thought if you fell in love with me and had my child, you would surely be unable to enter the palace, but in that case, my Duke Dinggua's residence would inevitably be implicated. It's better to ruin you like this. To make the emperor despise you, so that the one I love most can forever enjoy that supreme honor. You're crying like this. Don't tell me you actually thought I loved you. No matter who becomes empress, I would find a way to ruin her, unless my Urao is the one sitting on the empress's throne. See how much I love my Urao. For her happiness, I can clear all obstacles for her. I was already in too much pain to speak. He left me with a pale blue silhouette, walking away with ease. He left. But he left me with a dead end, casually ruining my entire life. A gentle breeze rose, and the scent of Osman thus wafted from outside the sedan curtain, refreshing the heart and mind. My eyes were filled with a coldness that seemed bottomless. Xie Yanji, for the sake of your true love Shu Yuran, you not only harmed me but also brought ruin to my entire Shen family. Between you and me lies a sea of blood and hatred, separated by hundreds of corpses, in this lifetime. Do you still wish to remain unscathed, to let your beloved white moonlight bask in imperial favor and enjoy unparalleled honor and glory? Unfortunately, you are destined to be disappointed. The next day, I rode the magnificent empress's carriage and entered the main gate of the imperial palace in a grand procession. Under the gaze of the entire palace, I, dressed in an exceedingly luxurious bright yellow court attire, walked step by step toward the emperor and received the empress's seal of authority from his hands. As the legitimate daughter of the prime minister, my every move was dignified and proper, without a single flaw to be found. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw noble consort Shu Yaroreo below the platform staring at me intently. Her beautiful phoenix eyes were slightly upturned, not concealing her hostility toward me in the slightest. Shu Yaroreo possessed a stunning beauty, with a pair of enchanting, amorous eyes as tender as water, truly captivating enough to topple cities and kingdoms. Unlike the consort's bold and flamboyant allure, my beauty was one of pure elegance, with skin like jade and congealed cream, resembling a lotus emerging from the water. At just 15, I had bright eyes and white teeth. In the prime of my youth, I smiled faintly, my red lips curling slightly. I know my own beauty. No wonder consort Shu Yaroreo was worried. And Xie Yanji was the blade she had long prepared in her scheme. In my previous life, the emperor was wary of my father's position as prime minister. So, his humiliation of me was a pretense. His true intention was to use it as an excuse to eliminate the entire Shen family. During the reign of the previous emperor, in gratitude for all my father had done for him, he specially appointed my father as prime minister. Half of the peace and prosperity of the Song family's empire was the result of my father's painstaking efforts. The late emperor, to preserve the honor of the Shen family, left a special decree appointing me as the empress to his son. Even if I had been unharmed at the time, he would have found other reasons to eliminate the Shen family. However, I will no longer give the emperor this opportunity. Last night, I had a long talk with my father by candlelight, and he has decided to resign from his official post and return to his hometown. Compared to life, wealth and honor are not the most important. I sat in the brilliantly lit Phoenix Roost Palace, waiting for the emperor to arrive. However, I wasn't sure how long he would stay. In my previous life, before entering the palace, the instructing auntie had said that the noble consort was the most favored consort in the palace, bound by the late emperor's decree. The emperor had no choice but to make me his empress, yet the entire palace whispers that the emperor's true wife is none other than noble consort Shu Yuran. She is the emperor's childhood sweetheart. Her aunt was the former consort Rong, now the dowager consort Rong. Consort Rong had previously lost her child, leaving her heart heavy with sorrow. To bring a smile to consort Rong's face, the late emperor specially ordered her niece, Shu Yuerao, to enter the palace to keep her company. Shu Yuerao's background was somewhat complicated. Her mother had been arranged by the late emperor to marry into the northern tribes, which led to Shu Yuerao's birth. Shu Yuerao carried the bloodline of the northern Khan. Later, the Khan of the northern frontier accidentally fell from his horse and passed away. With the intercession of consort Rong at the time, the late emperor brought the mother and daughter back to the palace. The emperor's birth mother was a deposed consort who later died in the cold palace. The emperor was not favored in his childhood and suffered harsh treatment from the palace servants, sometimes even being served spoiled food. Shu Yuran grew up in the desert, with a fierce, straightforward temperament and a strong will. While in the palace, she once came across several nannies bullying the young prince and immediately stepped in to help the emperor out of the situation, with Shu Yuran's assistance. His life in the palace became much better than before. Over time, she fell in love with this stubborn young man, and the emperor, he fell in love with this sunlit woman. She was the beam of light in his dust-covered heart. But alas, no matter how perfect the beginning, who can guarantee the ending? I sighed and straightened my slightly bent back. The weight of the pearl-studded headdress and phoenix crown made my shoulders ache, yet I tried my best to maintain the most dignified posture. Zizhu immediately stepped forward and asked if I would wait for the emperor to arrive. I let out a light laugh, unfazed. Wait, of course I would wait. I don't believe he would dare to refuse the empress's dignity by being absent even on the night of their grand imperial wedding. He will definitely come, sure enough. Moments later, a figure in bright yellow lifted my bridal veil. Under the flickering candlelight, I revealed a shy smile, my delicate eyebrows arching gracefully, making me appear even more charming and lovely. Without his father's suppression, he showed a bit more favor towards me. After drinking the wedding wine, he sat on the bed piled with festive quilts, and we faced each other in silence. But the next moment, before I could speak to ease the awkwardness, Shu Yuerao's chief palace maid hurriedly came to report, saying the imperial consort had gotten drunk and accidentally sprained her ankle, begging the emperor to come see. Upon hearing this, the emperor dashed out of the palace gate as if flying, leaving me only with his receding figure, and me alone sitting on the bed. Zizhu instantly stood up for me, but I didn't care at all. The decades-long bond between Shu Yuran and the emperor naturally holds an extraordinary place in his heart. To bring her down would by no means be the work of a single day, so why should I dwell on a moment of disappointment? Thinking that the Shen family was now safe, my heart was at ease. I then had Zizhu extinguish the candles and slept soundly through the night. The next day, all the imperial consorts came to my Fengqi palace to pay their respects. They were all daughters of officials sent by the Empress Dowager to the imperial harem, but unfortunately, they rarely got to see the emperor even once in a year or two. I took a moment to recognize each of their faces, then had my maids reward them with generous gifts. However, the seat reserved for noble consort Shu Yuo remained empty. Noble consort Xiao, who was beside me, expressed her indignation on my behalf. It's one thing for the consort to be arrogant on ordinary days, but to be this late today in the presence of Her Majesty the Empress shows she has no regard for the central palace. I smiled faintly and told her not to worry, as justice lies in the hearts of the people. After that, I drank several rounds of tea with them, but there was still no sign of consort Shu Yuo coming to pay her respects. Seeing the concubines begin to whisper among themselves, I directly dismissed them to kneel in farewell and return to their palaces to rest. I did it on purpose, of course. The more arrogant and domineering consort Shu Yuo became, the more I had to remain dignified and sensible. She could recklessly seek the emperor's affection. Alas, the imperial family is the most heartless of all. The emperor's love can bring you immense glory in one moment, and cost you your head the next. Therefore, what I seek is always the most reliable power. Only power is eternal. It wasn't long before rumors spread in the palace that the imperial consort, emboldened by favor, had grown arrogant, even skipping important events like paying respects to the Empress. After hearing this, the Empress Dowager even had her senior maid come to see me, and bestowed upon me various treasured gifts like Eastern pearls, gold, jade, and phoenix hairpins to soothe the grievances the imperial consort had caused me, even as the Empress. I still bowed respectfully to the senior maid who had served the Empress Dowager for decades. Of course, this show of respect was for the eyes of my aunt, the Empress Dowager. What is love, if you can make someone's heart ache for you? That is the highest form of open strategy. Sure enough, after the Empress Dowager's intervention, the Emperor came to dine with me just a few days later. He explained to me that he had heard the imperial consort had sprained her ankle that night, which had flustered him and caused him to leave me waiting all evening. I shook my head to indicate it didn't matter, gently placed a piece of chestnut chicken in his bowl, then looked at him with a radiant smile. I clearly saw him momentarily lose his composure, a flicker of admiration in his eyes. This is only natural. After being reborn, I practiced this smile countless times. When the Emperor was not around, I would often face the bronze mirror, finding the best angle to practice the most enchanting smile, and today, I am dressed in simple, everyday clothes, making me appear even more pure and adorable, evoking a sense of tenderness. They say spring rain moistens all things silently, and a person's heart will eventually surrender under the relentless infiltration of details. Of course, I'm in no hurry. After all, someone will be more anxious than I am. Sure enough, before the evening meal was even finished, the noble consort suddenly suffered another bout of heart palpitations. Her chief maid knelt on the ground, pleading with the Emperor to visit the noble consort with tears and a runny nose, yet there was not a hint of remorse in her eyes. After all, both she and the consort knew that the Emperor would surely abandon me to see his beloved consort. The Emperor looked at me, a flicker of guilt flashing in his eyes, and he tightly grasped my hand. I picked up a handkerchief and gently wiped the corner of his mouth, saying softly, "Her Highness the consort is unwell. Your Majesty should go and see her quickly." The Emperor did not expect me to be so considerate, and he actually seemed a bit embarrassed. His gaze held a touch more approval as he looked at me. Then he patted my shoulder and followed the senior palace maid as she left. Before he departed, I draped the heavy cloak over him, saying the wind was strong outside and I was worried he might catch a chill. I stood very close to him while putting on the cloak, and my delicate hand accidentally brushed against his firm chest, causing my ears to instantly turn red. I quickly lowered my head, pretending not to dare to look at him. But I knew he was watching me. I could feel his gaze growing increasingly intense. Then I urged him to hurry and not keep the imperial consort waiting. As he left, he suddenly turned back and gave me a meaningful glance. "See, the fish has taken the bait." The Emperor went to Consort Shu Yarao's palace and did not come to the Phoenix Roost Palace for nearly half a month, and Consort Shu Yarao never came to pay her respects either. When the other consorts came to pay their respects, their eyes held sympathy, pity, and emotion when they looked at me. Naturally, there were also those who were there to mock me. I was just cracking sunflower seeds with them, chatting about everyday life, and in my leisure time, admiring flowers together, gazing at the vibrant blooms in full splendor in the imperial garden. I softly recited a line of poetry: "Flowers do not bloom for 100 days. If even flowers are like this, how much more so are people?" Yet my calm and detached attitude, in turn, earned me the Empress Dowager's great admiration. In her heart, I was not only her niece but also a queen who seldom felt jealousy. And I could even get along well with all the concubines. Faced with the tough-talking noble consort, I never held a grudge against her. When I heard she had heart palpitations, I even sent the imperial physician to check on her several times, even though the entire harem knew she was faking it. Thus, the Empress Dowager, my aunt, grew even fonder of me. A few days ago, when I went to her palace to pay my respects, she held my hand tightly and repeatedly praised the late emperor for his foresight. Tonight, when the emperor's carriage passed by the Phoenix Roost Palace, he saw many sparkling fireflies. The fireflies flickered in the pitch-black night, shining as brightly as stars. Hearing the sound of the zither inside, the emperor gently pushed open the door of the Phoenix Roost Palace. Before my eyes is the scene of purple bamboo accompanying me, while I, clad in light gauze, dance along with the fireflies. I am dressed in a flowing, moon-white gauze, with my hair styled like the immortal maiden in the painting, holding a green lotus in my hand, dancing gracefully under the moonlight, resembling the fairy Chang'e. The emperor was mesmerized. He stared at me intently. Although I had noticed his presence early on, I pretended not to see him, completely lost in my dance. The dance lowers the moon over the willow-lined tower, The song exhausts the breeze beneath the peach blossom fan, as the dance ended. He clapped his hands, praising me repeatedly, but I, like a startled bird, instantly reverted to my previous fragile and pitiable state, flustered as I bowed in salute. My full head of hairpins happened to come loose at that moment, and my dark tresses cascaded over my shoulders, accentuating my fair and delicate skin. He quickly walked to my side and picked me up in his arms, smelling the lily fragrance on me. His gaze grew even more intense. Then, he closed the palace door. And the attendants tactfully withdrew. "Empress, I owe you a wedding night. The crabapple blossoms are most enchanting when first touched by rain. A few delicate blooms, so graceful, seem about to speak." The emperor seemed somewhat repressed, wildly and recklessly taking his fill on me. I held him tightly without saying a word. After it was over, he embraced me, playing with the strands of dark hair on my shoulder, twining them around his fingertips. I looked up at him with deer-like, moist eyes. Innocent as a child, in that instant, I saw a flicker of heartache in his gaze. The next moment, he swiftly rose from the bed. Understanding his intention, I quickly helped him into his bright yellow robe and tidied his slightly disheveled hair. Seeing my calm expression, his departing figure paused for a moment. "Empress, I promised the noble consort to visit her palace." Before he could finish, I feigned shyness, quickly pecked his cheek, and then revealed a gentle smile. "Your Majesty is the wise ruler of the realm, and all the people of the land are your Majesty's subjects. As the Empress, I understand even more the principles of assisting your Majesty. Ensuring the stability of the inner palace is my duty, and I dare not forget my responsibilities." Then I tightly held his hand, and under the flickering candlelight, I looked even more beautiful, like a fairy in a painting. "Your Majesty, in my presence, you may always do as you wish. I will always listen to your Majesty. There is no need for concern. Please go see the noble consort." Seeing how understanding I was, the emperor showed a trace of emotion on his face, then promptly left the Phoenix Roost Palace. No matter how beautiful a flower is, seeing it every day will eventually lead to boredom. After a while, the flamboyant peony becomes less interesting than the pure and lovely white orchid. The emperor visited my palace with increasing frequency, and each time, I could envelop his hidden anger with my trembling tenderness. When he came, there was often a trace of bitterness on his face, yet every time he left, it was filled with satisfaction and delight. You see, to win a man's heart, tenderness is always the ultimate weapon. How else can it be said that a gentle blade cuts deepest, each strike taking a life? The imperial consort gradually noticed that the emperor was becoming increasingly unable to keep up with her in the intimacy of the bedchamber. Indeed, though the emperor never stayed the night when he visited me, I always had a way to leave him utterly exhausted. As clever as the imperial consort was, how could she not see the signs? Having never looked at the records of the imperial household department, she ordered the archives to be brought directly and examined them herself. Seeing the name Shen Yunshu written repeatedly, she became furious. With her fiery temper, how could she possibly hide her displeasure? Soon, it was heard that during lunch with the emperor and the noble consort, the two first argued, then had a heated quarrel. Zizhu reported to me with a face full of joy. She said that the palace maids were quietly spreading the word. This was the first time the emperor had argued with the consort, and the first time he had failed to appease her, leaving her Weiyang palace in a huff. Looking at Zizhu's beaming face, I simply smiled faintly and then asked her to light the storax incense for me. This incense was the emperor's favorite, and every time it was lit, I would place a few slices of pear on top. Soon, the fragrance of pears filled the room, a clear and slightly sweet aroma that permeated the entire Phoenix Roost Palace. If nothing unexpected happened, the emperor would arrive very soon. However, before the emperor arrived, the imperial consort came first. Her palace attendants rudely pushed open the doors of the Phoenix Roost Palace while I was in the middle of doing my makeup. Long strands of hair cascaded to the floor, the small lattice window half open and half closed, as a gentle breeze swept through, lifting a few locks to dance lightly in the wind. I wore a long gauze dress the color of moonlight, barefoot, beautiful as a painting. She looked at me, her eyes filled with jealousy and anger, her hands trembling slightly. I didn't ask her to bow, but simply walked barefoot past her, then prepared the lychees that the emperor loves. I gently picked up each plump lychee, and after peeling it, the round, crystal-clear flesh was truly delightful. But the next moment, a plate of freshly peeled lychees was pushed to the ground, scattering everywhere. I panicked instantly, my heart aching, and knelt on the ground to pick them up one by one, a dignified empress, kneeling to pick up lychees. Of course, I did it on purpose. The palace maids beside me were already restrained by the consort's attendants. They lowered their heads, not daring to watch me make a fool of myself. I knelt barefoot on the ground, my outer robe slipping off just enough to reveal my delicate collarbones and the unspeakable bruises on my neck. Shu Yuran saw it and was instantly enraged. She stepped forward directly, gripping my neck, her eyes bloodshot. I just looked at her, terrified and weeping, not saying a word. Instead, she laughed in anger. Seeing me cower, she grew even more ruthless. Stop pretending. I despise such hypocritical little vixens like you. What's with this act of innocence just to win the Emperor's favor? What does being the Empress matter? You're nothing but a fleeting novelty to him, he once said. To become like Mandarin ducks, I'd not regret death. To be his companion, I'd envy no immortal. He also swore that in this lifetime, he would love only me. Let's see who can protect you today. Now that Song Huijin isn't here. Immediately after, a slap landed directly on my face, leaving 5 glaring finger marks on my fair skin. All the palace attendants were shocked, not daring to breathe. Barging into the Empress's central palace was one thing, but to actually strike her, this was no longer just arrogance and audacity. It was a crime punishable by the extermination of one's entire clan. The next second, another slap was about to land, and I tightly shut my eyes, calculating the time in her mind. Almost there, just a little longer. Sure enough, a pair of hands stopped her. A bright yellow figure before her tightly gripped her wrist, his face clearly showing 7 parts of anger. Noble consort, she is my empress. How dare you overstep your bounds like this? The noble consort glared at the emperor. Yet she saw him firmly protecting me. Suddenly, a tear fell, and I slowly gave in. She let go of her hand, turned around as if wilted, the vigor she had when she first arrived suddenly gone. The emperor looked at me, anxiously holding my face, asking if I was all right. I threw myself into his arms, my large teardrops landing on his face, and I bit my lower lip hard. Finally, I grabbed the hem of his robe, my voice soft and tearful, tenderly calling him Brother Song. Sure enough, I felt a sudden tremor in a certain part of his body, and in his eyes, the initial tenderness was now mixed with a hint of desire. When the imperial consort heard me call the emperor Brother Song, her recently calmed emotions flared up again in an instant. She recklessly smashed all the jewels and jade in my palace, and the masterpieces of calligraphy and painting that the emperor had painstakingly sought for me were torn to shreds by her in just a few moments. Before the emperor and the others could react, she left behind the words, Song Huijin, you can only be mine, and stormed out of Fengqi Palace. As for me, holding a plate of lychees I had picked up from the floor, I knelt barefoot at his feet, my heart aching so much that tears fell. Brother Song, it's all Yunshu's fault for being so incompetent that I couldn't even protect the lychees you love the most. He sighed, patted my head, then lifted me into his arms and said helplessly, you silly little fool, you truly make my heart ache. You are the dignified empress of the central palace. How could you let a mere consort strike you? If I weren't here, would you just endure such a great injustice in silence? I looked at him, burying my face tightly against his chest, then said timidly, Yunshu only knows that sister is the one in Brother Song's heart, so no matter how wronged I feel, I don't want to make things difficult for him. Brother Song, please don't take it out on sister because of this. Okay, I know, all he wants is everyone's submission, even the radiant imperial consort, who was once the light in his heart, but now he is the emperor of this land, and he will never allow a woman to challenge him. Sure enough, his eyes softened, and the way he looked at me was as gentle as a pool of water. When will the imperial consort ever be as sensible as Yunshu? He laid me on the bed, touched my swollen cheek, and held me tightly. Then he pulled down the beaded curtain in one swift motion, pressing an impassioned kiss to my lips. Yunshu, will you bear a child for me? Of course, I would not bear a child for him. On the night I entered the palace, I drank a contraceptive potion, ensuring I would not conceive for 3 years. However, there were plenty of others in the palace eager to bear children. This was the first time he spent the night in my quarters, and from then on, he grew even more brazen. Staying in my palace without restraint, every month I have a few days of discomfort, and upon my recommendation, the emperor visited several other palace consorts. The noble consort was confined to her quarters for a month. However, the noble consort's flute playing is truly exceptional. How could it go to waste? A few days later, as the emperor passed by, the noble consort effortlessly captured his heart with just one melody, everlasting longing. The emperor pushed open the gate of Weiyang Palace and never came out that day, staying at the consort's residence for 7 consecutive nights. Zizhu told me this while I was practicing calligraphy. On the large and small sheets of Xian paper, there was only one character: stillness. Beside me were various history books, half-read. When the emperor was away, I brewed tea and practiced calligraphy, feeling quite joyful and carefree on my own. I also often visited my aunt, the Empress Dowager, in her palace, but that didn't mean I was oblivious to the world outside. The secret letter from outside the palace arrived just as I finished reading that line from the Book of Documents. The human mind is precarious, the moral mind is subtle, remain refined and single-minded, and hold fast to the mean. I had just tossed the secret letter into the brazier, watching it turn to ashes, when consort Shu Yurang arrived with the emperor and other concubines. The moment the consort saw me, her sharp voice echoed through the entire bedchamber: "Queen Shen Yunshu, how dare you seduce the son of the Duke of Dingwa, attempting to have an illicit affair and defile the imperial harem?" I watched her hysterical outburst and couldn't help but frown. Before I could even decide how to deal with Xie Yanji, he had already lost his composure, or perhaps, for the first time, the noble consort was truly afraid. She was so afraid that someone might truly steal the emperor's favor. So she grew desperate enough to sacrifice even Xie Yanji, who loved her most, just to get rid of me. I smiled faintly, tilting my head, and looked playfully at the emperor. "Brother Song, what is the consort saying? Why can't Yunshu understand? Who does Yunshu love most in her heart? Doesn't Brother Song know?" Song Huijin's eyes darkened, as if he wanted to say something, but he was quickly interrupted by the quick-tongued Shu Yuo. "A queen, so shameless, actually plans to secretly meet with an old flame. If it weren't for the second son of the Duke of Dingwa's family being loyal and devoted, wouldn't you have turned the entire imperial harem upside down by yourself? Your Majesty, I, Shu Yuran, may have a willful and indulgent nature, but my heart for you is as clear as the heavens and earth can testify. Unlike some people, who appear pure and innocent on the surface but secretly seduce your Majesty's ministers, bewitching and shameless." Zizhu was so anxious that her face turned bright red, wanting to speak up for me, but I signaled for her to step back. I put down the book I had just finished reading, walked gently to the emperor's side, and respectfully bowed. Then, looking directly at the consort, she asked bluntly, "Consort, I respect you and call you sister because you entered the palace early and have served His Majesty for so long, but with all this talk of seduction and secret affairs, sister, those who don't know better might think this isn't the imperial harem but some disreputable pleasure house. Sister, since you claim I've been involved in an illicit affair with an outsider, where is your evidence?" Shu Yuo's eyes showed a hint of pride. Then she had a servant present a letter. It was written by Xie Yanji himself, saying that just yesterday he had entered the palace to see the emperor, and I immediately sent someone to invite him to meet and reminisce at the Lake Island. Upon hearing this, he was so frightened that he lost his nerve and hurriedly reported it to the emperor. I looked at this letter and laughed uncontrollably, as if I had seen the biggest joke in the world. The imperial consort frowned, as if looking at a fool. Then, she clapped her hands impatiently, and an unfamiliar young palace maid hurriedly knelt down, crying out in protest, "Your Majesty, Your Highness, I know nothing." That day, seeing the Empress troubled and distressed, I was only following orders to seek out Xie Yanji. Her Majesty also instructed me to deliver her personal handkerchief to him. Upon hearing this, Emperor Song Huijin showed a hint of anger on his face, and his gaze toward me became more probing. I looked at this palace maid and immediately turned to the emperor, kneeling and refusing to rise. "Your Majesty, this palace maid has only recently arrived at Fengqi Palace. I have not seen her often, and according to Zizhu, she previously served Lady Ling, who is the biological cousin of the noble consort. This matter concerns my reputation, so I naturally must investigate it thoroughly. I implore Your Majesty to conduct a thorough search of this little maid's room. Surely, some clues will be found to prove my innocence." At this moment, I knelt on the ground. My hair slightly disheveled, tears silently fell, my eyes like pools of autumn water, my whole being like a small flower battered by waves, desperately in need of something to cling to. The emperor, seeing me in this state, instantly showed a hint of softness in his eyes. I knew he loved this feeling of being relied upon too much. This made him, who was accustomed to being in a superior position, feel quite pleased. Indeed, he was an emperor, but first and foremost, he was a man. A man who needed the admiration of women. At that moment, the Empress Dowager hurried over and, seeing me kneeling, directly pulled me to my feet. She looked at the emperor, her words full of complaints, saying that I've been going to her palace every day lately to practice calligraphy and read books. Wishing I could just live in the Empress Dowager's palace, how could I possibly have time to secretly meet with a man? Soon after, several palace servants found several letters and several hundred taels of silver in the young maid's room. The letters detailed how to frame me by stealing my handkerchief and delivering it to Xianji, and at the bottom of those few hundred taels of silver, the character Shu was engraved in small print. This was official silver from the Shu residence. Upon seeing this, the young palace maid immediately looked at me in disbelief. She then quickly knelt on the ground, clutching the garments of consort Shu Yuo, begging her to save her. Only then did a flicker of panic appear in the noble consort's eyes. The next moment, she stared fixedly at me, a complex mix of emotions surfacing on her face, and slowly spoke, "Your Majesty, since this matter requires caution, why not summon Xianji to have a proper conversation with Her Majesty the Empress? That way, whether there is any improper relationship between the two will be clear at a glance." The Emperor still approved. Xianji soon arrived at Fengqi Palace. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a faint coldness, even a hint of murderous intent lurking beneath. I calmly sat in my seat, slowly taking a sip of tea. He knelt on the ground and refused to rise, saying that we had been childhood sweethearts. But after he learned I was to enter the palace, he severed his feelings for me. Yet I, on the other hand, often subtly continued to tempt him. Even this time he entered the palace, I still wanted to rekindle our past relationship. He knew he was guilty, but even at the cost of his life, he would defend the Emperor's reputation to the death. I watched his performance with a barely noticeable, faint smile at the corner of my mouth. I had originally planned to deal with Xianji properly after the imperial consort stepped down, but since he was in such a hurry to meet his end, I had no choice but to grant his wish. I glanced at him, my eyes filled with contempt. For the sake of the woman he loves, I am to become a living sacrifice. This is unfair, it's extremely unfair. So, I feigned panic and exclaimed, "Is it the Xie family's tradition to slander others without cause? Just because my father resigned from his post, does that mean the Shun family can be bullied at will? I have never been childhood sweethearts with Lord Xie, so how could there be any talk of innocent affection? However, I do know that the one who truly holds Lord Xie's heart is not me, but someone else." After these words were spoken, both the imperial consort and Xianji present showed unusual expressions on their faces. I had long known the most hidden affair in Xianji's heart. Naturally, this was something Xianji himself confessed to me in my previous life. When he forced me to drink the safflower, seeing the two of them slightly flustered, I felt a surge of satisfaction inside. It was time to make this fire burn even brighter. Seeing young Master Xie today reminds me of the rumors from before. I heard that the only true love in young Master Xie's heart is none other than Her Majesty the Imperial Consort. You're lying. The Imperial Consort and Xianji spoke in unison, saying the same thing. Xianji even rushed up to me, barely containing the fury in his eyes, as if he wished he could devour me whole, but my light-hearted remark that followed directly sentenced him to death. If your Majesty does not believe it, simply remove Xianji's upper garment, and the truth will be revealed at once. I have heard that on Xianji's chest is tattooed the name of his most beloved person. Upon hearing this, Xianji looked up in disbelief, his eyes filled with terror. The next second, the Emperor strode up to him, staring at him intently. His expression was dark and terrifying as he nodded to the palace attendant. The attendant restrained Xianji, who was desperately resisting, and removed his upper garment. At this moment, Imperial Consort Shu Yuran still did not know what she was about to face, her expression showing a hint of tension and confusion. When Xianji's chest was exposed before the Emperor froze. The Imperial Consort spat out the tea in her mouth directly. Then, the look in her eyes as she gazed at Xianji was filled with undisguised murderous intent, because on his chest, there were 4 characters tattooed. My wife, Royue. Royue was Shu Yuerao's childhood name. The Emperor's face was dark and somber. I quickly knelt down, and the palace attendants immediately followed suit. Kneeling as well, the Emperor picked up a dagger from nearby and walked unhurriedly toward the Imperial Consort. The consort, now panicked, knelt directly at the Emperor's feet. She claimed that it was Xie Yang who was audaciously lustful, that he had dared to covet her, and that he was guilty beyond forgiveness. The Emperor lifted the consort's face, gently stroking it, but the affection that once filled his eyes was gone. He threw down the dagger, his words dripping with coldness. "Kill him, and I will believe in your innocence." The entire hall fell into dead silence, only the sound of everyone's suppressed breathing. Shu Yueruo trembled as she picked up the dagger and slowly walked toward Xianji. Xianji looked at Shu Yueruo before him, a faint smile appearing on his face, he closed his eyes and said gently, "Do it." Shu Yueruo hesitated for a moment, then raised her sleeve high and plunged a dagger fiercely into Xie Yanji's body. Xie Yanji fell to the ground with a thud, and Shu Yueruo was so frightened that she collapsed on the floor. The next moment, Xie Yanji's body was carried out by the palace attendants, and the bloodstains on the floor were quickly cleaned away. It was as clean as if nothing had ever happened. Yes, after I died in my previous life, my spirit once saw Xie Yanji and Shu Yueruo celebrating with wine. To express his love for Shu Yueruo, he tore open his chest to show her those few small characters. Shu Yueruo was so frightened on the spot that her face turned pale, and she urged him to remove it immediately. "I've long planned to use this tattoo to set a trap, inviting you into the snare, Xie Yanji. Oh Xie Yanji, what you love the most will one day be your downfall." I coughed lightly, and Zizhu behind me quietly slipped away unnoticed. The emperor approached, gently helping me up, his face full of apology. "Yunshu, I have wronged you." I rushed straight into the emperor's embrace, tears streaming down my face. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught sight of the distraught Shu Yueruo, and a faint smile touched my lips before I spoke softly. "Your Majesty is a wise ruler, and I know you will clear my name of this injustice, so, I am not wronged." Seeing the intimacy between the emperor and me, the noble consort's face instantly darkened. Suddenly, I felt she was like a withered flower. Outwardly, it might still appear radiant, but inside, it had long since rotted away. The imperial consort was once again placed under house arrest, only this time, it wasn't for a month, but forbidden to leave without an imperial decree. The emperor stayed in my palace every night, and I lit the storax incense daily, which he greatly enjoyed. I removed his crown for him and massaged the acupoints on his head. Every time at this moment, he would hold my hand with a satisfied look on his face. "It's always so comfortable here with the Empress. Every time I stay here, even without saying a word to you, I feel at peace. You make me feel happy." What a dog of a man. "You've said the same thing to Shu Yuran, haven't you, 100 times, or 1,000, unfortunately, you can't fool me, but in my palace, it's naturally a joyful place. From now on, I'm afraid I'll make you even happier." Just 2 months later, right after the morning court session, the emperor hurriedly went to the consort's quarters once again. Shu Yueruo was with child. The news reached me as I was copying Buddhist scriptures for the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager said that I resembled her greatly, especially in temperament. It was as if we were cut from the same cloth. After hearing the news of Shu Yuran's pregnancy, the Empress Dowager asked for my opinion. I didn't speak, but instead wrote a few lines on paper. In ancient times, those skilled in warfare first made themselves invincible, then waited for the enemy to become vulnerable. Upon seeing it, she nodded approvingly and remarked that despite being only in my teens, I was as mature as an old woman like her. She said that after her sister married my father, he endured many hardships for the sake of the court and the people. She had thought that her adopted son, now the emperor, would be a good ruler. But she once had a dream in which the emperor killed her sister and the entire Shen family, and she herself was suspected by the emperor, who eventually gave her poisoned wine, and she died on a winter day. The Empress Dowager tightly held my hand. Her eyes filled with compassion. The next second, she shook her head again, saying it wasn't enough, and then added a few large characters. "Opportunity knocks but once." Looking at her calm eyes, I knew it was time. After casting the net for so long, it's time to catch the fish. The imperial consort's child was not saved. The imperial physicians said it was due to pent-up frustration, causing an unstable pulse and making a miscarriage highly likely. By the time the emperor, the Empress Dowager, and I hurriedly arrived, the medicinal soup had already spilled all over the floor. Shu Yueruo, dressed in her undergarments with her hair disheveled, threw herself into the emperor's arms, weeping as if her heart were breaking. Yes, she had accompanied the emperor into the palace for several years, receiving his favor the most, yet she had never borne a child. This was her greatest sorrow, and now that she had finally conceived, she was extremely cautious. Every day, her food, clothing, lodging, and movements were checked and rechecked, leaving no room for error. But how could this child be gone? Her face filled with grief, her eyes suddenly darted toward me, then she lunged at me with a ferocious expression. "It's all you, Shen Yunshu. You must have done something, otherwise, my child would have been fine. It's all you. It's all you." Seeing this, the emperor quickly held her back, pulling her into his embrace. His face was full of sorrow as he comforted her, saying, "Yueruo, don't cry. We will surely have another child. I promise you, I will give you another child." All right. Upon hearing this, I immediately covered the corner of my mouth with my handkerchief. 1 second later, and I feared I would burst out laughing. Men are truly ridiculous. They lie without batting an eye. Sweet-talking people with such smoothness. Shu Yue, don't be foolish. You will never have children. The emperor consoled Shu Yue for a long time. And she only fell asleep slowly after crying herself to exhaustion. I stepped forward, touched the emperor's hand, and signaled for him to stay with the imperial consort, then helped the empress dowager leave. A few nights later, the emperor was once again angered while at Shu Yueao's place. It was said that the jade pendant he had given her as a token of love was nearly smashed by him in his fury. The emperor then came to my quarters, but I pretended to be asleep. So he ended up staying at the Hall of Mental Cultivation. After the emperor left, I quietly draped a cloak over my shoulders and, under the cover of night, made my way to Shu Yueao's Weiyang Palace. This place is indeed resplendent and magnificent, especially after her miscarriage. The emperor, feeling sorry for her, bestowed upon her various rare and precious treasures. She lay on the bed, having lost a lot of weight, no longer possessing the overbearing demeanor she once had. Seeing me approach, she quickly struggled to sit up and called for her palace maid. I gently sat down on a chair and said that the Empress Dowager has been practicing Buddhism recently, and the dust in the Buddhist hall needs to be cleaned. Her palace attendants had all been sent away and wouldn't be back for a while. She snorted coldly, then put on that haughty expression as if I were her maid. I chuckled softly and got straight to the point. Xie Yanji is dead. Are you sad? She was stunned, never expecting me to bring up Xie Yanji. But the next second, she rolled her eyes at me, and a voice feigning strength came through. A mere young master from a noble family, daring to harbor thoughts about the emperor's favorite consort. He deserved to die. It was his own fault for developing feelings he shouldn't have. From beginning to end, he was nothing but my puppet. I made him do whatever I wanted. Such a useful blade. Wouldn't it be a waste not to use it? I touched the pearls and jade on her head and spotted a phoenix hairpin that I liked. This nine-tailed phoenix hairpin was exceptionally gorgeous, and I was quite delighted. The next second, I directly pulled it out and inserted it into my own hair bun. What a pity. If Xie Yanji knew from beyond the grave that the woman he loved his whole life not only killed him with her own hands but also slandered him like this after his death, I wonder what he would think. In that case, I actually feel it wasn't worth it for him. But today, I'm not here to talk about Xie Yanji. I picked up the bronze mirror beside me, admiring the phoenix hairpin, clicking my tongue in admiration, feeling quite delighted. Indeed, a fine hairpin deserves to be paired with a beauty, don't you think, sister? Without waiting for Shu Yueao to respond, I went ahead and spoke on my own. I came today because I pity you, sister, and I want to tell you some truths. Sister, the emperor you trust the most has deceived you. You will never have children. Never. As soon as the words fell, only the crackling sound of charcoal from the brazier remained in the air. The hall was eerily quiet. The next second, she lunged at me. But I easily dodged. Her face was pale, her whole body trembling, and though she tried to sound calm, there was a clear hint of panic in her voice. Shen Yunshu, what do you mean? How dare you curse me? I smiled faintly and spoke with ease. Sister, what are you saying? How would Yunshu dare to curse you? I'm merely speaking the truth. Your father was once the great Desert Khan who commanded countless troops. Though he is dead, you still carry half the blood of the desert people. Have you not heard the saying, if they are not of our kind, their hearts must be different? If you were to have a child, it's hard to say whether the desert people might develop improper ambitions. If they were to support your child as emperor to secure benefits for their northern frontier, how could the emperor ever allow it? Moreover, the northern border has only been stable for a few years. How could the emperor possibly take such a gamble? So, the emperor can give you endless affection, but he can never give you a child. But dear sister, why can't you see through this truth that's as obvious as fire heating oil? The emperor's thoughts are so meticulous. The fertility-enhancing decoction you drink every day is actually a contraceptive potion. But sister would never know the truth about the medicine. Just as she searches for the best imperial physicians every day to examine it, she still can't find out. Because the only master of the entire Imperial Medical Institute is the emperor. Shu Yuan suddenly lunged at me, her hands gripping my shoulders tightly, yet her eyes were filled with doubt and panic. No, it must be you, this vile woman, sowing discord between us. The emperor and I have shared so many years of affection. He would never treat me this way. Absolutely not. All I wanted was a child from him. Seeing me standing motionless as she grabbed me, she suddenly let go, her eyes seeming to recall something. When I entered the palace to accompany my aunt, I often saw the emperor being bullied by others. Though he was thin and small, His eyes were full of light. Even when facing the mistreatment from various servants, his back remained straight and unwavering. I just couldn't stand it, so I took severe revenge on everyone who had bullied him, and only then did his life in the palace become better. He said that as long as he became emperor, I would be his only empress. Not only that, he would make me the most favored empress in history, giving me supreme affection. I would be his only woman. At first, I naturally didn't believe it, but when he said it, he was so sincere, as if a single glance could span eternity. So I willingly helped him. He wanted the throne, so I persuaded my aunt, consort Rome, to switch sides and did everything possible to help him win over the ministers. Only then did he narrowly secure the throne. Then she turned around, as if drained of all energy, and slowly dragged her steps toward the bed. How could a lowly woman like you possibly understand the years of affection between him and me? He said, with the imperial decree in place, I cannot become the empress, but he can give me his soul love. I don't care about being some worthless empress, I only want his love, all of it. But after you arrived, everything changed. I could feel it. His heart was gradually no longer with me, that day. He almost smashed that jade pendant, the token of love he gave me, which I had treasured for so many years. He just picked it up and was about to break it. It seems he has forgotten. Anything can be smashed, but that jade pendant must not be. Perhaps there are too many treasures in the palace. He has grown accustomed to them and no longer remembers what is most important. Or perhaps, there are too many women in the palace, and he has gradually forgotten who it was that accompanied him from having nothing to the pinnacle of power. She gently sat on the edge of the bed, and when she looked up again, her eyes were filled with tears. I looked at her, remembering how in my previous life after I died, my spirit watched her write a letter to Xie Yanji, saying that he had done very well, saying that my father and consort Rome's faction had long been at odds, after the emperor's throne was firmly established. His political views increasingly diverged from those of my father. My father advocated for benevolent governance, while the emperor considered it a woman's soft-hearted mercy, so the emperor had long wanted to eliminate my father. Now, by wiping out my Shen clan, they are not only easing the burden for her aunt but also relieving the emperor's worries. All for the sake of her emperor. So in my previous life, was it just that my Shen family, hundreds of people, deserved to be bathed in a river of blood? Then, I gently leaned in and whispered into her ear, do you know why you got pregnant? It's because I had someone secretly switch your medicine. Do you know why your child suddenly disappeared? It's because the emperor fed you a miscarriage-inducing drug mixed with safflower in your prenatal tonic. Although your mother is Han Chinese, you carry the blood of a foreign race. Do you really think the emperor would risk the throne being usurped by having a child with someone of foreign descent? You see, such a simple truth, yet you fail to understand it, to see through it, or perhaps, deep down, you do know, but you chose to gamble, to test your weight in his heart. Now you know, the emperor does not love you as much as you imagined. He loves no one, he only loves himself. Upon hearing this, she looked at me in disbelief, her face full of shock and horror. Then, she covered her head and let out a loud wail, crying and laughing as if she had gone mad. Her voice was piercing and mournful, like that of a vengeful ghost. You see, no matter how much you love someone, you should never treat another person's life as worthless or as a tool to curry favor. She loved the emperor too much, so much that she lost herself. Now that she knows the truth, and with her strong-willed nature, she can no longer force herself to feign affection for the emperor. Her power has faded. I took the phoenix hairpin from my bun, tossed it beside her, and quietly left. I know, those who are too rigid in nature never live long, and what I excel at most is killing the heart along with the person. Shu Yuo is dead. The very night I left, she set herself on fire in the Weiyang Palace. I heard the fire in Weiyang Palace burned for a full day and night, and her remains were charred black by the flames. When the palace servants carried out her body, her hand, burned to charcoal, still tightly clutched the token of love between her and the emperor, that jade pendant. When the emperor came to my palace, his complexion was very poor. He held me tightly, his voice choked with emotion. Then, he looked at me and asked if he had done wrong. I looked at him with a heart full of pity and gave him a kiss. The emperor is the son of heaven, and the son of heaven is never wrong. Your Majesty, you are tired, allow your humble consort to attend to your rest. He sighed at the scent of pear blossoms filling the room, yet obediently lay down on my bed. After I teased him repeatedly, he flipped over and pinned me beneath him, the air instantly thick with overwhelming desire. The earlier sorrow had long since melted into trembling, deep kisses. Beneath the trembling bed curtains, I laughed with such unrestrained joy for the first time, but as I laughed, tears began to stream down my face. The man she had loved her entire life, others only needed to play a small trick to easily distract his heart. For the first time, I felt that Shu Yuo was so pitiful. Shu Yuo, oh Shu Yuo, look, this is the man you've loved your whole life. If I remember correctly, your remains should not yet be cold. After Shu Yuran's death, the number of pregnant concubines in the palace suddenly increased, with Shu Yuran gone and a new batch of court ladies arriving in the palace. The emperor became much more unrestrained. 2 months later, the emperor actually summoned 3 concubines to the Hall of Mental Cultivation at the same time. Upon hearing this, the next day the Empress Dowager directly reprimanded the emperor, saying he was being reckless and violating ancestral rules. Naturally, as his nominal mother, she had to put on a show, but my aunt did not actually punish him, and I had long since used the excuse of catching a chill. Feigning ignorance and keeping myself far away from it all, the emperor claims to know his mistakes, but behind the scenes, he still finds endless ways to misbehave. He simply changed the location, quietly slipping into the consort's palace, and I, of course, must protect the consorts. These newly entered palace ladies are, in name, the daughters of ministers, but in reality, it was I who went to great lengths to purchase these skinny horses under a pseudonym from Yangju Prefecture. Each of them was more delicate than a flower, radiant, ethereal, pure, and charming. As the one in charge of the imperial selection, I had arranged everything in advance, ensuring they entered the palace as daughters of low-ranking officials. In the emperor's eyes, their maternal families held such low status that he had no reason to be wary of them. Since that is the case, one need only fully enjoy the fine moments and beautiful women. Their purpose is to exhaust the emperor's vitality in every possible way, without the restraint of reason and loyal ministers. The fervor he once had as a prince gradually faded away in the soft, fragrant embrace of these beauties. It is said that to die beneath the peony is to be a romantic ghost. Song Huijin, do you like the grand gift I gave you? Soon, half a year passed, and the palace welcomed 2 new princesses and 1 prince, a rare and joyous occasion. The emaciated emperor was overjoyed and immediately named the prince the crown prince, yet his life, gnawed away by frankincense and indulgence in wine and women, had long been slowly drained. In the storax sent by the imperial physician, I added a type of incense that induces drowsiness. Over time, it inevitably leads to mental confusion and a gradual addiction to wine and sensual pleasures, and the pear fragrance that the emperor loves the most just happens to mask the scent of that incense. That's why, before, he increasingly enjoyed coming to my place and grew fonder of my tender embrace. Under the diligent service of several thin horses, the emperor soon drank the dear blood wine. He even had the imperial physicians secretly prepare a potent medicine to strengthen his body. 2 months later, one day, the emperor had just risen from a consort when he suddenly collapsed and could not get up. After examining him, the imperial physicians shook their heads repeatedly, saying there was no way to save him. I sat by his bedside, feeding him bowl after bowl of medicinal soup, pretending to weep with the other palace consorts, tears falling like pear blossoms in the rain. Now that the crown prince has been chosen, Song Huijin naturally cannot be allowed to remain. That night, I dismissed all the palace consorts and fed him the final bowl of medicinal soup. He looked at me, smiling as he drank it, but the next moment, he tightly grasped my hand. That was a potent tonic, but for his already weakened body, he couldn't handle it. He clutched my hand tightly, my eyes bloodshot, glaring fiercely at him. Song Huijin, not a single person in the entire harem loves you. The one who loved you the most is dead, burned to ashes in a fire, leaving nothing behind. Song Huijin, you are cold-hearted by nature. In the end, you turned your blade against everyone who ever supported you. This is your retribution. In your previous life, you slaughtered hundreds of my Shen clan over baseless accusations. In this life, let me take charge of this realm for you. His bulging eyes stared at me, bloodshot, but he could no longer utter a single word. His hand, which had been tightly gripping mine, slowly fell and never rose again. Yes, I am grateful to Xie Yanji, but I hate Shu Yuareo, but I hate Song Huijin even more. In my past life, my spirit watched as my parents and elder brother were beheaded, their only fault being their excessive loyalty, and this sincere patriotic sentiment, in Song Huijin's heart, was nothing but treason and rebellion. Song Huijin, you truly are unworthy of being an emperor. 9 funeral bells tolled, and the next day, the imperial capital underwent a drastic change. The young prince was too young, so the Empress Dowager assumed regency, both in reason and in emotion. The minister could not refute. And those who stubbornly disagreed after a few heads were chopped off, the others no longer had any objections. Thus, I became the youngest Empress Dowager in history. As for the affairs of the court, I felt reassured with the assistance of the ministers. Just after the court session, I handed the young emperor to the wet nurse, and a familiar-looking eunuch, limping on his leg, came forward to offer tea. "Isn't this my old acquaintance Xie Yanji?" He was kneeling on the ground, trembling with fear. Not daring to utter a word. Oh, right, he had long since had his tongue torn out, so how could he possibly speak? I leaned in close and whispered softly in his ear, "Xie Yanji, that day I arranged for someone to save your life early on, but it wasn't for nothing. You have good looks. So I directly sold you into the Southern Breeze Pavilion. I heard you were quite popular among the young masters of noble families. What a pity, you actually tried to run away in the end. Every time you ran, they broke your bones. In the end, they nearly beat you to death, and it was I who saved you again. Now that I have severed your lineage's fortune and arranged for you to enter the palace, see what great blessings you have received. However, while the death penalty may be avoided, living punishment is inevitable. I recall that in Shu Yuro's palace, there was a eunuch who also had a fondness for handsome young eunuchs. I have specially transferred him to the Shokong Palace. He will treat you well. From now on, you shall be with him." After saying this, a lewd-looking eunuch nearby quickly knelt down to express his gratitude. I nodded, and the eunuch dragged Xie Yanji out like a dog. Soon after, a piercing scream came from the servants' quarters, startling a few birds into flight. I sipped my tea and casually rewarded the palace maids and eunuchs serving the tea with a handful of gold melon seeds. For no other reason than that today's tea was exceptionally sweet and fragrant. The end. And so the first story ends. What do you all think? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed it, please give this video a like. Now, here's the second story. It has been 2 years since we married, yet I still need to rely on aphrodisiac incense to share a bed with Ji Yusheng. During our intimate moments, he would pick up a piece of my undergarment to cover my eyes and softly laugh. "Didn't you study the same classics as your sister? Would she ever stoop so low for a noble title like you do?" In that moment, it finally dawned on me he had always favored my sister, which was why he had never held me in any regard. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the year I came of age. The betrothal gifts sent by Ji Yusheng hadn't even warmed up in the courtyard, and the towering man before me, who would one day become the Duke of the State, asked me what my wish was. This time, instead of asking him to crush the Xiongnu to avenge my brother, I said, "Marry me." My mother married beneath her station when she wed my father. Back then, she took one look at that dashing young scholar parading through the streets on horseback and was certain he would achieve great things someday. She was so determined to marry him that she even severed ties with her own family. My mother wanted an official title of nobility. And my father indeed proved to be as exceptional as she had predicted. The year my mother was pregnant with my older brother, my father received consecutive promotions, earning him the qualification to petition for a noble title, so she waited with a heart full of joy, only to end up waiting for her father to bring home a pregnant woman from outside. He elevated that woman to the status of an equal wife and even petitioned the emperor to grant her an honorary title. Father said she was his childhood sweetheart, who had accompanied him all the way from being a commoner to becoming a high-ranking official. Though they had never been formally married, they had long shared the bond of husband and wife. He could not let her down. Before mother was married, she was a noble lady with high aspirations. After learning the truth, she angrily questioned him about why he had married her in the first place. Father simply said that it was all mother's wishful thinking. But in the end, mother did not seek a divorce. In the Pei residence, she and the co-wife lived at opposite ends, fighting with each other every day. When my brother was born, the concubine next door also gave birth to a daughter. From then on, my mother had a new hope. She longed for my brother to excel in his studies and rise swiftly in the world. As his birth mother, she would then be entitled to an honorary title. My father did not favor the children in the household based on their birth mothers. He simply preferred the clever ones. Thus, my sister and my brother lived as comfortably as fish in water, while my days were very difficult. Kneeling in the ancestral hall, copying books, and fasting were all common occurrences. As long as my academic performance was worse than theirs, I would be punished. But I was always worse than them. This wasn't because I was lazy. To catch up with them, I had tried every method of rigorous study, even tying my hair to the beam and pricking my thigh with an awl to stay awake. But my elder brother and sister were simply too exceptional. Everyone in the capital admired Minister Pei's children, elegant and talented, brilliant and extraordinary. They were truly heaven-sent geniuses. I don't have that much talent, and I can't make the dean of Dongguan Academy break the rules to accept me like they did. In the end, it was my older brother and sister who went to plead with the dean. Out of regard for his favorite students, the dean waved his hand and granted their request, although during my 3 years at Dongguan Academy, I burned the midnight oil and studied day and night, eventually achieving quite good results, and people occasionally mentioned me when talking about the Pei family's children, but my father still gave up on me. In the mansion, when I paid my respects and bowed to him, he always acted as if he hadn't seen me. For items like handkerchiefs, which daughters offer to their fathers as tokens of filial piety, he would only use the ones embroidered by my elder sister, even though the embroidery masters said my needlework was among the finest in the capital. As for mother, she had no time to spare for me. Every day, she was busy brewing nourishing soups for my elder brother, hoping he would soon earn her an official honorific title. The only ones in the mansion who treated me well were my elder brother and sister. Each time mother left his courtyard, my elder brother would quietly call me over to share those nourishing meals with him. My sister always enjoyed buying things for me. Any jewelry or trinkets she fancied, she would get me a matching set. However, she had to give them to me in secret, because my mother disliked her, and her own mother forbade it. With their support, I felt life was still bearable, until I came of age. That year, my father grew increasingly impatient with me. One evening, drunk at the dinner table, he declared he wanted to marry me off as soon as possible. I was so frightened I couldn't eat. That year, my brother went off to war to earn glory and died on the frontier. The army sent back few belongings, only half of the embroidered pouch I had made for him, a worn-out suit of armor, and a few unsent letters home. The armor was used to build a cenotaph. Father said my brother was useless, and he didn't read any of the letters, tossing them all to mother. My brother's death deeply affected mother, and she suddenly fell into a state of hysteria. When her hysteria flared up, all her usual high spirits vanished without a trace, and she would only spend the whole day murmuring my brother's name under her breath, and when she was lucid, she would just hold my brother's letters from home and weep. I timidly said I wanted to read the letters too, but she just told me to get lost. That wretched woman has a noble title, but I don't. She also has a good daughter. While my son is dead, I have nothing left. Why did I have to give birth to such a useless thing like you? It's all my sin. I shouldn't have given her the infertility potion. I should have drunk it myself. Then I wouldn't have had to carry you in the dead of winter while watching them so deeply in love. Tears fell silently. With only my maid Yua sobbing softly as she wiped them away with a handkerchief, she whispered, "Miss, let's go back." Father didn't hold a funeral for my brother, hastily setting up a cenotaph to settle the matter, but when outsiders asked, he would put on a show of being utterly grief-stricken. He had always been hard-hearted and wasn't saddened by my brother's death. Instead, he was calculating who he should marry me off to as a replacement wife, to best benefit his own path to success. And just at that moment, Ji Yu Sheng came to the Pei residence to propose marriage. He wanted to marry me. This marriage was a timely reign, dispelling my father's idea of marrying me off to the 70-year-old minister, and it also lifted my mother's spirits. She gripped my hand tightly, full of vigor, and laughed heartily. "Excellent, so you've hooked him. Why didn't you say so earlier?" I lowered my head. I don't know what happened either. Ji Yu Sheng and I weren't familiar with each other. Our only interaction was at Dongguan Academy. He was in the same grade as my older brother and sister, and was their close friend, so whenever he saw me, he would call me little sister. Mother didn't pay attention to my unusual behavior and just continued speaking. "The heir of the Marquis of Yuanan. What a fine husband. You're about to become the wife of a noble heir. Remember, when you arrive at the Marquis residence, be respectful and observe proper etiquette. Be filial to your parents-in-law, and most importantly, win Ji Yu Sheng over quickly so he can request an imperial title for you. That woman has an imperial title, and soon my daughter will have one too. Ha 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 ha, an imperial title, yet another imperial title." Mother's laughter echoed in the dim and desolate room. Her once black hair had turned mostly grey, her face haggard, like a candle flickering in the wind, so I couldn't say anything, just nodded. After marrying into the Marquis household, life became much easier than at home, yet although it was Ji Yu Sheng himself who wanted to marry me, after the wedding he treated me very coldly. On our wedding night, he lifted my bridal veil, glanced down at me briefly, then left without a word. My parents-in-law treated me better than Ji Yu Sheng did, though it could only be described as polite, with a subtle sense of distance. During my 2 years in the Marquis household, I served Ji Yu Sheng with utmost care, attended to my in-laws with thoughtful consideration, and after enduring countless hardships, I finally earned the unanimous praise of everyone in the estate. Yet I never managed to move my husband's heart, although I had long been eligible. He never once petitioned for a noble title on my behalf. I dared not return to the Pay residence, dared not face my mother when she was lucid. She would always grip my hand and ask how much longer it would take. Questioning why I was so useless, my in-laws couldn't stand watching anymore and gave me some advice. You've been married for 2 years now, it's time for you and Sheng to think about having children. When the time comes and you have sons and daughters, you should also have an official title to your name. I took their words to heart and also used the aphrodisiac incense given to me by the matron, which finally made the usually indifferent Jiyu Sheng more intimate with me. That night, the moon was bright and the stars sparse. Jiyu Sheng and I drank together. He had some clear wine and seemed a bit dazed. Suddenly, he grabbed my wrist, leaned in, and pressed closer, asking with a playful smile, "Did you light the passion incense again tonight?" I glanced at the incense burner and was about to say no, but he sealed my lips with his. An hour later, I lay wearily on the couch, mentally counting the number of intimate moments we'd shared recently and thinking it should be enough. Jiyu Sheng, however, was still in high spirits. He picked up a piece of my undergarment, covered my eyes with it, and chuckled softly. "In the academy, didn't you study the same classics of sages and virtuous men as your sister? Would she ever resort to any means necessary for an official title like you do?" In the darkness, I froze, hearing my own trembling voice ask, "What do you mean?" He paused briefly, then spoke unhurriedly, "Nothing much, just that you're truly far inferior to her. You know what, she passed the imperial examination and became a female official, debating state affairs with men in the court, how heroic and spirited she was. And you..." Jiyu Sheng stopped speaking, and I understood his unspoken words, a bitter taste rising in my mouth. "Then why did you marry me in the first place?" I regretted asking that question the moment I heard Jiyu Sheng's light chuckle. His voice was lazy and unhurried, as if he were telling a joke. "I am the heir of the Marquis of Dingyuan. Do you think I would lower myself to seek the hand of a mere vice minister's daughter because I was captivated by your talent and beauty? Of course not." The woman who could make Jiyu Sheng disregard social status to seek her hand in marriage, the one with unparalleled talent and beauty, was my elder sister. "I am merely fulfilling a promise, carrying out a friend's request." His tone carried a hint of disappointment and regret. It was at that moment that I suddenly understood everything. The reason he treated me coldly and never petitioned for an honorary title for me was simply because he had favored my elder sister from the very beginning and had always looked down on me. After Jiyu Sheng finished speaking, he left. And I suddenly felt utterly exhausted. My hands and feet turned icy cold, and I no longer had the strength to think about anything. I fell into a deep sleep on the couch. I slept deeply, for a long time, and I thought I would never wake up again. But I did wake up, and the first thing I saw was Yuana's face. Overjoyed to the point of tears, she sobbed and hugged me. "Miss, it's wonderful. You don't have to marry the old minister anymore. The betrothal gifts from the heir of Dingyuan Marquis have arrived. He wants to marry you." Looking at her youthful face and then at the familiar furnishings around me, I stood frozen in place, trembling all over. Miss, what's wrong with you?" "Yuana, my dear Yuana, I've just come of age, haven't I?" "Yes. It's only been a month since your coming-of-age ceremony." I suddenly burst out laughing. It turns out, I had returned to the age of 15. I had returned to the year my elder brother died, the year Jiyu Sheng sought to marry me. Jiyu Sheng's betrothal gifts had only been delivered a few days prior, and the 6 rites of marriage had not yet been completed. I led a white horse from the stable and loaded all the betrothal gifts onto it. Yuana had no idea what I was up to, chasing after me anxiously, asking urgently, "Miss, what are you going to do with this wild goose?" "I'm going to break off the engagement. Just wait for me to return at the mansion." Yuanyuan's figure was left behind by the galloping horse, facing the blazing sun and wind. I rode all the way to the gate of the Dingyuan Marquis Manor. The gatekeeper asked what business I had, and I simply handed him the betrothal gift, requesting him to pass it on to the young master. "I'm calling off this engagement." Just as I turned to mount my horse and leave, someone called out to me, "Pei Chowning." Looking back, I saw that the gatekeeper had already informed the master. Jiyu Sheng stood at the entrance of the estate, asking me with urgency and anger, "You want to break off the engagement?" I exchanged a glance with him and instantly sensed something was off. Jiyu Sheng's demeanor and gaze were more reminiscent of his 21-year-old self from the previous life, rather than the 19-year-old heir of the Marquis estate. Has he been reborn as well? But it no longer mattered. I simply said, "That's right." I'm here to break off the engagement, thank you for your previous care, but I won't trouble you this time. On the way back to the residence, I rode my horse at a leisurely pace. As soon as I entered the door, I saw my father's furious face. He didn't bother maintaining his usual gentle and refined demeanor, raising his hand to slap me across the face. You unfilial son, how dare you go to the Marquis's residence to break off the engagement? I couldn't dodge it and took the blow head on. My left cheek quickly swelled up red, and I tasted blood between my teeth. Fortunately, the heir sent word that he won't hold it against you. Go kneel in the ancestral hall now, and don't get up until the betrothal gifts are delivered again. If this marriage falls through, I'll hold you accountable. I lifted my eyes and saw my sister standing far behind father. She covered her mouth with a handkerchief, tears glistening in her eyes as she shook her head at me. She advised me to be obedient, or else I would face a heavier punishment. I smiled, touched my swollen cheek, and respectfully replied, "All right, I'll go see mother, and after that, I'll go kneel." When I went to mother's courtyard, I was in luck. She was awake. She had ordered all the windows in the room to be closed and was stubbornly reading a letter by candlelight alone. I pushed the door open and called out to her urgently, "Mother." She remained motionless, turning a deaf ear. I patiently softened my steps, slowly walking over, tears welling up in my eyes. "Mother, brother is already gone, and father refuses to hold a proper funeral. He is a heartless man. Can you divorce him? Please, let me take you away. My embroidery skills are excellent, and I've saved up some silver over the years. We can leave the Pei residence, buy a house, and live on our own." "All right." What answered me was my mother's resentful eyes and a slap. "Why did you call off the engagement, if you don't marry Ji Yu Sheng? Do you really intend to marry that old minister and make me lose all face? Why on earth did I ever give birth to you?" She began to weep again, her sobs full of sorrow and self-pity, but I only wiped away my tears in the darkness and whispered, "This is the last time. This is the last time I will ever consider you." As soon as I stepped out of my mother's room, I saw my sister standing at the door. Normally, she wouldn't come to my mother's courtyard, but today, sensing something was wrong with me, she made an exception and followed me here. She stood at the door, hearing everything clearly. As soon as I approached, she pulled me into her embrace. My sister's tears fell, landing on my forehead. Feeling a little warm, her voice trembled. "Why do you want to break off the engagement? Marrying into the Marquis's household is still better than staying in the devouring Pei family. Xingji is gone, and I can't protect you at home, Chowning. Please listen to me. Go to the Marquis's household first and live your life." "All right." I leaned against her shoulder, holding her tightly. "You gave him up for me, but what will you do for yourself?" She sighed softly. "Don't worry about me. I'll take the imperial examination for female officials. As long as I achieve something, father won't make things difficult." In my past life, my sister did indeed pass the examination and became a female official, but at this moment, the emperor had only just begun to restore the path for women to take imperial examinations. The system for female officials was still in its infancy, full of uncertainties and challenges. Yet, my sister resolutely chose this difficult path for herself. I sniffled, "You will pass the exam. You will wear the jade crown, meet the emperor, fulfill your ambitions in the court, and leave your name in the annals of history." I smiled again, looking into her eyes. "But I won't be going to the Marquis's residence. I'll go somewhere else. Sister, please help me one more time." I begged my sister to keep it a secret from everyone and helped me sneak out of the mansion. The capital was bustling, with brilliant lights as night approached. Vendors were busy shouting loudly, hoping to make a bit more business before heading home. And holding the half of a sachet that my brother had sent home, I knocked on the gate of the general's mansion, which had grown cobwebs from long being unoccupied. The door opened quickly, revealing a tall, handsome man with red lips and white teeth. Seeing my swollen face, he froze for a moment. I asked him, "Do your words from before still hold true?" Murongqing nodded. "They do." I nodded slightly. "All right, then I want you to marry me. I'll go with you to guard the border. I'll search for my brother's remains and give him a proper burial." Back at Dongguan Academy, my brother was closest with Ji Yu Sheng. Later, when he entered officialdom, he also became acquainted with Murongqing. Murongqing was the emperor's nephew, a man of prominent status. In his youth, his parents sacrificed their lives on the battlefield, and from then on, no one disciplined him. The emperor, in turn, doted on him excessively, for a long time. He was known in the capital as a young noble from a distinguished family, but people only knew one side of the story, unaware of the other. This seemingly frivolous man would, 2 years later, crush the Xiongnu and return in triumph, bringing peace and prosperity to the people of the land. Back then, my brother and Murong-Ching went off to war together, but when they returned, only Murong-Ching was left alive. He came to the Pei residence to find me, saying that he had been entrusted by his dear friend on his deathbed to take care of me. Murong-Ching asked me if I had any wishes. With tears in my eyes, I only asked him to crush the Xiongnu and avenge my brother. The man did not hesitate and immediately agreed. Even if you hadn't said it, I would have done this. I came to ask if you have any other wishes, he said, his Adam's apple moving slightly as his tone softened a little. Xingji said that your days in the residence have been very difficult. If you are willing, I will take you away from the Pei residence. But I shook my head. I did not take his words to heart, for he was merely a disreputable scion of a noble family, and not to be trusted. But later I found out that Murong-Ching had never spoken a single false word. When he heard me ask him to marry me, the man in front of me suddenly blushed at the tips of his ears and choked up. He seemed to be in a difficult position, afraid that he would refuse. I quickly added, I won't take up too much of your time, we just need to be a fake couple. Once we find my brother's body, we'll separate, of course, if you want to divorce me. Before I could finish, Murong-Ching gently covered my mouth. He averted his eyes, not daring to look directly at me, and coughed lightly. Don't worry, I'm not in a difficult position. Fine, I'll marry you. Hearing this, a heavy weight lifted from my heart. I gratefully shook his hand. Thank you, Murong-Ching chuckled. Well, I thank you too. Don't just stand at the door, come in and talk. He ordered the attendant in the residence to fetch some golden wound medicine, and without another word, began applying it to me. What happened to the injury on your face? I touched my face and realized it was swollen quite high. My father and mother had each slapped one side, so both were taken care of, quite symmetrical. Really, it's nothing, just a minor injury, I'm used to it, but this did stir a bit of worry in me. Could you marry me as soon as possible? I looked up into Murong-Ching's eyes, feeling somewhat ashamed. If it's too late, I might not live to see you again. Once father discovers I've run away, he'll probably break both my legs. The man's hand applying the medicine paused. For some reason, his expression turned rather unpleasant. All right. After I finish applying your medicine, I will enter the palace to request the decree. When returning to the Pei residence, Murong-Ching came with me. The gatekeeper, Uncle Zheng, was both surprised and delighted to see me back. He hurriedly opened the gate and cautiously reminded me, the master is discussing business with someone in the main hall, and he seems to be in a good mood. Miss, you should take this chance to slip in quietly. He had worked at the Pei residence for over 10 years. Watched the three of us siblings grow up, and treated us very well, always helping to cover up our sneaking out of the residence. I nodded gratefully. As we passed through the courtyard, Ji Yusheng's betrothal gifts had arrived once again, lying peacefully on the ground. Seeing this, a trace of annoyance flashed in Murong-Ching's eyes as he spoke with some urgency. I will have the betrothal gifts prepared by tomorrow. I reassured him, it's all right, whether these things are there or not. I'm going to marry you. Before we even reached the main hall, the people inside came out and ran into us head-on. Seeing that I had brought a strange man home, my father's initial look of joy instantly vanished without a trace. As his hand was about to habitually rise again, Murong-Ching stepped in front of me, his hand resting on the long sword at his waist, a fierce expression appearing between his brows. You wouldn't dare. Meanwhile, Ji Yusheng on the side coughed in displeasure. His phoenix eyes slightly raised. Uncle, don't forget what you promised me. I want her to come to my residence safe and sound for the wedding. He stared straight at me, which made Murong-Ching somewhat displeased. She won't marry you, Murong-Ching. Ji Yusheng finally gave him a proper look, letting out a scornful laugh with a hint of arrogance. What are you doing here? I've come to propose marriage. Murong-Ching's calm statement caused an uproar throughout the hall. Accompanying his words at the entrance of the Pei residence was a eunuch who had served the emperor for over a decade and was most trusted by his majesty. With temples half-grade, he smiled cheerfully as he led a procession of palace maids filing in one after another. I hope I'm not too late. Pei Chowning. Murong-Ching received the imperial decree. All members of the Pei household knelt neatly in the courtyard, bowing their heads respectfully as they listened to the eunuch proclaim the decree. By the mandate of heaven, the emperor decrees, Heroine, the daughter of Pei Yang, vice minister of rights, Pei Chowning, is of graceful appearance and virtuous character. The imperial nephew, Commandant Zhaowu Murong-Ching, is of dignified bearing and has achieved meritorious service on the frontier. The two are of suitable age and matched in talent and virtue. Truly a union made in heaven. We, considering the generations of loyalty and virtue in both families, hereby specially bestow this marriage, commanding them to become husband and wife, to join in matrimony, in hopes of continuing the lineage and bringing honor to their families. So it is decreed." After reading it, he rolled up the imperial edict, and Murong-Ching immediately stepped forward to receive it. "Your servant receives the decree." The eunuch smiled as he helped him up. "His Majesty has entrusted this humble servant to advise you. Since you are determined to marry, from now on, stay in the capital and live a peaceful life. Do not return to the battlefield and cause him worry." Hearing this, I grew somewhat anxious. If he truly ceased guarding the frontier, there would be no one left to defeat the Xiongnu and protect the people's peace. I only wished to escape the Pei residence through marriage. I never intended to alter the fate of the dynasty. Eunuch: "I thank you for conveying my uncle's kind intentions, but I must go to the borderlands." The next moment, Murong-Ching's words were like an anchor, calming my heart. "May this body long serve the country. Why need I enter the Jade Gate Pass alive?" His deep-set eyes held a calm and resolute determination, radiating an aura of righteousness. Suddenly, I felt a pang of sorrow for him. Why had people always misunderstood him as a playboy? Why hadn't I believed his words in my past life? After the father-in-law left, the kneeling crowd rose to their feet one after another. Everyone wore different expressions. Father stood there, his eyes dark and unreadable. My sister seemed to have many questions for me, but hesitated to approach because of Murong-Ching beside me. Only one person looked unusually pale. I looked up and whispered to Murong-Ching, "You should go back. I'll wait for you at the Pei residence to come and fetch me for the wedding." But looking at my still swollen cheek, he hesitated. "You should come with me. If you stay in the Pei residence, I won't feel at ease." "It's all right. With the imperial decree, my father won't dare to do anything to me." Murong-Ching lowered his gaze in thought for a moment, then handed me the sword from his waist. "If anyone dares to bully you, just draw this sword. I'll take responsibility for the consequences." I couldn't help but smile. All right. After he left, I turned to find my sister. But I had only taken a few steps when Jiyu Sheng grabbed my arm and pulled me away without explanation. "Pei Chowning, I have something to ask you." My sister, confused, quickly jogged over to stop us. "What is the meaning of this, Your Highness?" Jiyu Sheng didn't look at her, but whispered to me instead, saying that old debts from our past life remained unsettled and he needed to speak with me in private. So I nodded at my sister. "I'll be right back." Only when we reached the deserted eaves did Jiyu Sheng stop walking. His lips trembled, the corners of his eyes tinged with red, his expression one of sorrow I had never seen before, completely devoid of the usual dignity of the young Marquis. "Just because I didn't request an imperial title for you, you're going to find someone else." His eyes were bloodshot as he gripped my shoulders fiercely and growled in a low voice, "Pei Chowning, you can't do this." That day at court, I already reported to His Majesty. The imperial decree granting the honorary title will arrive the very next day. "Your sister has already received an official rank. How could I let you have nothing?" I lowered my gaze and gently brushed his hand away. "You've misunderstood, young master. I didn't mean it that way. It's just that from now on, I no longer wish to hold the title of Lady of the Court." He was taken aback, tears streaming down his face. "Why? It's not worth it. Neither my parents, nor the Pei family, nor the title of Lady of the Court, nor being the young master's wife, none of it is worth it. From now on, I will live according to my own heart. Without me, you can also freely marry a wife. Let us part on good terms from now on, each walking our own broad road, with no need to meet again." A few days later, when the betrothal gifts arrived, Murong-Ching came to discuss the wedding arrangements with me. I said I wanted everything to be kept simple. "I don't need a grand wedding procession or lavish banquet. Just a simple sedan chair to carry me into the general's residence will suffice. After we complete the wedding ceremony, we can rest for a few days, which should perfectly coincide with the army's departure date." He seemed at a loss, stammering as he asked, But marriage is the most important event in a woman's life. Are you truly willing to settle for such a hasty arrangement?" I gazed at the teacup on the table and replied softly, "Yes, truly. My parents aren't worthy of me specially serving them tea and bidding farewell upon my marriage. My brother is dead, my sister remains trapped in the Pei family's quagmire, and over all these years, I haven't made any other close friends. Besides, we're only pretending to be husband and wife. You'll need to properly marry someone in the future." Murong-Ching moved his lips slightly, but in the end, said nothing. His heart felt hollow, as if he kept trying to grasp something but was constantly met with emptiness. "That's right. She'll need to properly marry someone in the future." making our marriage too conspicuous would be bad for her. The wedding was kept simple in all aspects. But since Murongqing's parents were no longer in this world and he was the emperor's own nephew, we went to the palace to serve tea and pay respects to the elders. When we returned to the general's residence and opened the door, I found that a banquet had still been set up inside, the delicacies were still steaming hot, and there weren't many guests, just enough to fill one table. Sorry, I still took the liberty of making a decision. We will be leaving the capital soon. I think it would be wonderful to take this opportunity to see our family and friends one last time before the wedding. Murongqing spoke softly behind me. He had been silent the entire way back from the palace, and I thought he was preoccupied with something. Only now did I understand the real reason. Unconsciously, a wave of warmth surged in my heart. It's all right, I should be the one thanking you. Thank you for inviting my sister, the headmaster, Yuan, and Uncle Zheng. I'm glad I got to see them before I leave. My sister came over to guide me to my seat, and Murongqing sat down beside me. I studied at Dongguan Academy for 3 years and excelled in the 6 arts under the dean's guidance. After I came of age, my father stopped paying the tuition, so I no longer attended the academy. Come to think of it, it's been a while since I last saw the dean. Her eyes remained as kind as ever, carrying the profound and serene air of a scholar. She held my hand and sighed. How unpredictable life is. The two of you used to study in the same room. And now you've become husband and wife. We studied in the same room. The dean's words were puzzling. I instinctively glanced at Murongqing, and he shook his head with a smile. The dean must have remembered it wrong. Back then, your brother and sister came together to ask me to take you on as a student, she said slowly, sipping her tea. At first, I was reluctant. I didn't show any displeasure, only lowered my head in shame. After all, someone with my lack of talent could never meet the dean's standards for taking on a disciple. Among the 3 Pei siblings, I was the only dull one. I didn't agree right away, only allowed you to study with me for a month first. What can change in a month? Of course, nothing will change. Perhaps my older brother and sister pleaded with the headmaster again, so I was able to become her student for 3 years and avoided 3 years of beatings from my father. But I regretted it in less than a month, even though I had long known I was a hopeless case. Hearing those words still made me feel desolate. It wasn't a day for tears, so I forced a broad smile, only to hear her say, I should have taken you in from the very beginning, like a stone cast into a lake. Stirring ripples upon ripples, I looked up in a daze. Having been a teacher for so many years, I have taught many prodigies, but rarely have I seen a child as diligent as you. To stay under my tutelage, you burned the midnight oil, forgetting to eat and sleep. Over the past month, your belt has loosened, and you have grown noticeably thinner. Thinking back to when I first went to the capital to study, I, too, toiled day and night, burying myself in books, for the sake of a bright future. I shed countless bitter tears. Flowing water does not compete to be first, it competes in its endless flow. Towering mountains do not compete in height. They compete in their vast expanse. Chowning, you have done well in the past, and from now on, do not belittle yourself any longer. The dean had always been strict. Even my elder brothers and sisters never received much praise from him during their time at the academy, let alone me. But today, I so easily obtained what I had once dreamed of. How could one not be filled with bitterness? I am dull-witted, but fortunate that you, my teacher, have not abandoned me. I will remember your words today. Tears uncontrollably rolled from my eyes, threatening to ruin the makeup on my face. Murongqing tactfully offered his sleeve, and I unceremoniously grabbed it to wipe my tears. Then everyone laughed. On such a joyous day, one shouldn't shed tears. On the wedding night, the nuptial wine on the table remained untouched. Murongqing and I sat awkwardly together on the edge of the bed, gazing at each other in silence. You should sleep first. He left the bed for me, took off the heavy wedding attire, and wearing only a thin inner robe, diligently made a bed on the floor. The slightly open collar revealed his beautiful collarbones. Murongqing was well built, with broad shoulders and a narrow waist, his abdomen lean. The hem of his thin robe hung loosely, but the chest area was stretched taut. I silently reminded myself not to look at what is improper, quickly closed my eyes, and collapsed onto the bed. Switching from the hard bed in the Pei residence to the soft one in the general's manor was clearly an upgrade, yet I found it hard to fall asleep right away. Murongqing's side was also rustling restlessly. It seems he's not used to it either. Holding the bedding, I spoke softly. You're not asleep either, are you? Can you tell me about my brother? In the ink-black night, he responded with a sound of agreement. He spoke of the biting cold winds at the border, the dazzling golden light that the blazing sun cast upon the armor, and the almost prophetic wisdom my brother displayed as a military strategist. Listening to it all, I couldn't help but smile. But soon, he began speaking again of the Xiongnu's cunning, how they lured our dynasty's envoy delegation under the guise of peace talks, only to slaughter them all, sever their heads, and hang their bodies on the city walls as a provocation. My brother was in that envoy delegation, amid the chaos. Murongqing couldn't find his body, only retrieving half of the sachet I had embroidered for him. The Xiongnu colluded with traitors within our army, betraying our trust, seizing the city, and murdering our kin. Murongqing took a deep breath in the darkness, his hands clenching and then releasing. I will not return to the capital until the Xiongnu are defeated. I wept silently, nodding with all my strength. I believe you. If I don't find my brother's body, I will never return to the capital, even if it's in a mass grave. I will bring my family home. On the day the army set out, the sun hung high in the sky, and the weather was clear and bright. But there was suddenly one more person in the army who shouldn't have been there. Jiyu Sheng, clad in silver armor with a red cloak, sat astride a black steed, standing nobly at the forefront of the army. His phoenix eyes swept over me briefly before he angrily averted his gaze. A bad premonition stirred within me. What is he doing here? Someone nearby eagerly explained. I heard that 2 days ago, the heir of An Yuan who voluntarily requested permission from His Majesty to join the military campaign. Our dynasty truly has no shortage of outstanding young men. Is Jiyu Sheng going to join the army? What is he up to this time? There is more than just Murongqing who has the talent of a general in this world. At the moment when my mind was in turmoil, Jiyu Sheng's lazy voice reached my ears. He had ridden over on his horse at some point, curling his lips into a smile and saying, "Besides, Chowning, you know we're not ordinary people." He was talking about rebirth. You will eventually realize you chose the wrong person. With me here, he won't be able to become the Duke of Zhen this time. In his previous life, Jiyu Sheng served as an official in the court. He was highly talented and greatly favored by the emperor. Although he had never been to the frontier, he had always been deeply concerned about military affairs. Therefore, his words were well-founded. He had a clear understanding of the frontier situation, and his intention in joining the military expedition this time was to seize Murongqing's credit. I glared at him angrily. Shallow. Jiyu Cheng's face darkened. So what? He stole my wife, so he shouldn't expect to have it easy. With that, he whipped his horse and rode off without looking back. I was both anxious and furious, wishing I could chase after him and drag him off his horse. In my distress, I turned around and saw Murongqing leading my white horse toward me. He was still unaware of the future, his clear and bright eyes smiling gently at me. My nose tingled with sourness, and I felt like crying again. I married him not to bring him harm. Did you know, Jiyu Sheng is also going to guard the border? Murongqing nodded. I know. His expression was calm, but I was struggling to speak, stammering as I asked, what if Jiyu Sheng is very capable and defeats the Xiongnu before you do? The question was rather odd, and Murongqing chuckled, pulling me into his embrace, his chin resting on my forehead. That would be even better. I was stunned. What? 1 day earlier we drive back the Xiongnu. 1 day earlier the nation will be free from worry. And the people will have peace and health 1 day sooner. As long as it brings peace and prosperity to the world, it doesn't matter if the credit isn't mine. Lying against Murongqing's chest, listening to his strong heartbeat, I wondered why this person was so good. With just that one sentence from him, I knew Jiyu Sheng would never measure up to him. When we reached the border, a large army had already set up camp outside the city. Murongqing and the others were heading there to join the troops. As a family member, I stayed inside the city with the other soldiers' wives. Before Murongqing left, he told me, the military camp isn't far from the city, and communication is convenient. I don't need to stay in the camp all the time. I can return every few days. If you have an urgent matter, just have the attendant send me a message. I nodded and said okay. After he left, I looked at the empty room and felt a bit unsettled inside. After washing my face, I walked out onto the street. The climate at the border was not as good as in the capital, dry with little rain all year round. Due to frequent invasions by the Xiongnu, the people were always on edge. But under the scorching sun at that moment, the city's residents were busy making a living, each attending to their duties, with smiles on their faces, even with endless warfare. The family livelihood will not be broken. The borderlands are harsh, but people still hold hope in their hearts, hope that one day the Xiongnu will be completely repelled and the old lands reclaimed, hope that one day they can live and work in peace, raising their children and grandchildren. I clenched my palm. Remembering what Murong-Ching had said, many military wives who come to the front lines settle in the city. Some take up farming and weaving, others open shops. Passing on skills from the capital to this place, striving to make the frontier more prosperous. Fortunately, I have excellent embroidery skills. While searching for my loved one's remains, I can also contribute to the people's well-being. Murong-Ching said he would be back in a few days. But it was actually a month later when he truly returned to the city. By the time he came back, my clothing shop had already opened and was running smoothly. Not only was it selling clothes and small items like sachets, but it was also taking on apprentices, teaching embroidery skills for free. When I saw Murong-Ching push the door open and enter, I let out a light hum and said, "So you still remember how to come back?" The man, who hadn't even had time to take off his armor, immediately flushed red, beads of cold sweat forming on his forehead. He hurried over to me, wanting to take my hand but not daring to, and after a long pause, he finally managed to utter a sentence, looking both anxious and pitiful. "It's my fault." The attendant following closely behind quickly leaned forward and said with a smile, "Please don't blame him, madam, there's truly a reason for this. In his haste to return and see you, my lord didn't even take off his silver armor before rushing back to the city. Look at the other soldiers who've returned, is any of them still wearing armor?" I had originally meant it as a jest. But hearing the attendant's explanation and seeing Murong-Ching's travel-worn appearance, I immediately felt embarrassed, strange, a faint sweetness stirred in my heart. No one had ever made a special effort to return home early just for me before. It was always me waiting patiently for others. Waiting for my parents in front of the Pei residence, waiting for Jiyu Sheng in front of the Marquis estate. But now, it seemed different. I turned my face away. In that case, I won't pursue the matter further. Murong-Ching laughed, his eyes bright and clear. "Thank you for your mercy, my lady." This time he returned, bringing me much news. Jiyu Sheng indeed took advantage of his rebirth, presenting many tactics and strategies that were originally devised by Murong-Ching in his previous life, earning everyone's admiration. The man said this with a calm expression, the air of An Yuan, who is truly extraordinary. The military now holds him in high esteem. I gritted my teeth as I listened. What's so extraordinary about him? He's just reaping the benefits of others' hard work. Thanks to his brilliant strategy, we have decided to storm the city in the coming days and reclaim the occupied Yangju city ahead of schedule. In the last major battle, the Xiongnu launched a surprise attack under the guise of peace negotiations, colluding with traitors from within to seize 5 of our cities in one fell swoop. It was at Yangju city that they hung the slain envoy on the city wall, beheading and humiliating him. If I am to search for my brother's remains, Yangju city is the most likely place. Once they recapture Yangju city, I will also leave the place I currently live and go there with the other military wives to help the people restore their livelihoods and repair the city that the Xiongnu wantonly destroyed. Doesn't this wandering life feel bitter to you? Murong-Ching asked softly. And I shook my head. It's not bitter. Where the heart finds peace, there lies my home. Knowing that my dearest loved one is in this place, no matter how difficult it gets, I no longer fear. Murong-Ching left again after just 2 days. He left behind his silver armor, saying his leather armor was torn. I asked the attendant to fetch it and decided to personally take it to the city's military workshop for repairs. The armorer already had quite a few suits of armor. And as I watched the cold gleam reflecting off the plates, a sudden idea struck me. Tell me, could we add an extra protective mirror on the chest? In my previous life, when welcoming triumphant soldiers back to the capital, I remembered that the style of their armor was slightly different from what we have now. They had an additional round bronze plate embedded on the outer part of the breastplate. The armorer looked up. "Madam, you are truly far-sighted. The type of armor with a protective mirror that you mentioned is already under development, but it will still take some time to complete a full set." He pointed not far away. "If you're worried about your husband, you could follow the example of the military wives over there and sew small pieces of heart-protecting mirrors inside the leather armor. Although it won't be very effective, it might bring some peace of mind." I thanked him and agreed. Yangju city was recaptured faster than expected. 2 months later, I moved to Yangju city with the silver armor that had the heart-protecting mirrors sewn in, along with the other military wives. When I saw Murong-Ching again, his figure appeared even more agile, his arms leaner and more powerful, and he seemed much more imposing. Though his skin had been tanned to a wheatish hue, it only made him look more handsome. The attendant had told me that although Jiyu Sheng had earned considerable prestige in the army with his military talent, his master was in no way inferior. In terms of bravery and skill in battle, No one in the army could surpass him. Murong-Ching had just finished his training and was wiping the sweat from his temples. I took the cloth and carefully wiped it for him. When I reached the tip of his ear, I noticed it was flushed so red it seemed about to drip blood. Why is he suddenly shy? I looked up and noticed many soldiers standing nearby, teasingly watching us and laughing loudly. General Murong is usually so heroic and spirited, but who would have thought that upon seeing his wife, even the toughest steel would turn into something soft enough to wrap around a finger? Newlyweds are always so deeply in love. Ji Yusheng was among them, his face tight and his expression extremely unpleasant. I ignored him and spoke directly to Murong-Ching. The armor you left last time has been repaired. I also sewed a heart-protecting mirror inside the leather armor. Remember to wear it. And give me your other pieces of armor so I can sew them in as well. Murong-Ching gently wrapped his arm around my waist, his ears turning red as he agreed. As soon as I arrived in Yangju City, I immediately began searching for my brother's remains. Back then, the Huns plundered the city and insulted the envoy mission, which enraged the local people so much that they voluntarily collected the bodies of these young men who had sacrificed their lives. These ambitious young men, who had traveled all the way from the capital in their vibrant attire, ended up dismembered and buried forever in the bitter, cold borderlands, thousands of miles away from home. Murong-Ching took me to the place where they were buried. Out of 100 envoys, there are only 56 graves here. The bodies of the rest couldn't even be found. His voice was filled with pain. The people have collected their belongings and even painted portraits of their heads, just waiting for the day their loved ones can bring them home. I choked up. But you didn't find my brothers, did you? The armor that was sent back earlier was the clothing my brother had left behind in the army. The letters home had been written long ago, and the half sachet was picked up by Murong-Ching in my past life. After they recaptured Yangju City, they had also sent these belongings collected by the people back to the capital for identification. I went back many times, unwilling to give up, but I never found anything belonging to my family, not even the other half of the sachet. Later, I heard that a few people from the envoy had miraculously returned alive, but my brother was not among them. Even after I was reborn, no news ever came from afar about those I once knew. I will keep searching. As long as I haven't seen the body with my own eyes, I still hold on to a glimmer of hope. We've taken Yangju City, but we still need to recapture the other 4 cities and drive the Xiongnu 1,000 miles away. I'm not skilled in military affairs. I just follow the army's advance, slowly opening clothing shops in every city and gradually searching for traces of my relatives. And every time Murong-Ching returns home, as long as I see that the heart-protecting mirror remains unbroken, my heart settles a little more. I don't know when it started, but I had already come to regard him as another family member. On this day, he returned once more, but he was being supported by others. His personal attendant and Ji Yusheng carefully helped Murong-Ching inside, with the military doctor following closely behind. What happened? I threw down my needle and thread in a panic, letting out a startled cry as I rushed over. Instinctively, my gaze cut through Ji Yusheng, suspecting he had done something. Seeing me like this, he was clearly hurt, but he just hung his head, unable to say a word. Murong-Ching, however, immediately said, "It's nothing, just a minor injury. I'll recover after a few days of rest." He said it lightly, but I noticed something was off right away. "What do you mean by a minor injury? Your leather armor is torn, and your heart-protecting mirror is shattered. Must you also lose your life at the border like my brother did? It's already so difficult for me to find just one person now." I turned my back to him, hiding my tears that fell like strings of pearls, not wanting him to see. Murong-Ching embraced me from behind, burying his face by my neck to comfort me. "It really is just a minor injury. Let me go inside so you can examine me carefully." "All right." The military doctor and the senior attendant also came closer. "Don't worry, this time, it's all thanks to your heart-protecting mirror. Although the general was hit by an arrow, it didn't pierce through the flesh. He only suffered some internal injuries to his organs, and he'll recover after a few days of rest." "Really?" They nodded their heads like shaking drums. I finally let out a sigh of relief. "Good, then I'll help him inside to rest right away." I helped Murong-Ching into the house, and Ji Yusheng, who had been silent all along, finally spoke. "I've wronged you." He wasn't speaking to me. His eyes were fixed on Murong-Ching. "I will remember the arrow you took for me today. Focus on recovering. When you return, I will definitely catch the traitor who leaked the military intelligence." Murong-Ching showed a hearty smile. "Then I'll trouble you with it. Victory and defeat are common occurrences in war. Don't blame yourself too much. There will be many days ahead for us to fight side by side." and I'm still looking forward to Ji Yusheng's brilliant strategies to overcome the enemy." Ji Yusheng nodded heavily and also laughed. "Good, it's a deal." From this day on, he was completely convinced by Murongqing. Earlier in the courtyard, I had heard their conversation and understood the whole story, so after entering the room, I didn't force Murongqing to take off his robe for me to inspect. He was quite proactive, volunteering to remove his armor and then starting to undo his inner robe. I scoffed, not even blinking at his lean and handsome upper body, instead staring straight at his trousers. "Go on, take them off, let me see if you're injured on your legs." Murongqing gasped sharply, his neck instantly turning red. And he froze in place. He nonchalantly picked up his clothes and draped them over himself, sitting down opposite me and changing the subject. I didn't just come back to recover from my injuries this time, but also to bring you a message." "What message?" Murongqing lowered his gaze. "During the attack on Pan City this time, we captured someone who was gravely ill. He is the younger brother of the Xiongnu Chanyu, the very one who proposed the peace negotiations back then, when this criminal, who had used peace talks as a pretext to kill envoys, was captured." The soldiers in the army recalled the humiliation their brothers had suffered, emotions ran high, and they clamored to execute him as a sacrifice to their banners. The Chanyu's younger brother, knowing full well the gravity of his sins and already terminally ill, offered no resistance. He only begged to be allowed to say one last word before his death. Ji Yusheng's silver sword was already at his throat, but Murongqing gritted his teeth, suppressing his burning rage, and asked him what he wanted to say. Murongqing stood by the window and recounted to me, word for word, what the Chanyu's younger brother had said. Not all the envoys from that year's peace negotiations were killed. There was a young man named Pei Xingji, who was exceptionally skilled in pharmacology and extremely intelligent. The Chanyu had poisoned the envoy's meals, but with just one taste, he detected something amiss and realized the Xiongnu had no genuine intention for peace. That very night, he plotted an escape with the others. However, there were traitors within the envoy group, and the plan was leaked. Some managed to flee, their whereabouts unknown. Others were captured and killed by the furious Chanyu before they could escape. This is why the number of bodies in Yangju City did not match the count of the envoy group. He looked somewhat moved. Since there's no body of Yang Zhizhou in the city, he might still be alive, but he could also be dead. After all, if Pei Zhixing were truly safe and sound, he would have done everything possible to return. But he has been gone for a long time without coming back. Moreover, in my previous life, I never received any news about my brother. No matter what, I won't give up until I truly see him. Murongqing tightly held my hand. "Neither will I." 1,000 mountains in my noon dream, an arrow flight of window shade. In the blink of an eye, I had already spent nearly a year at the border. Of the 5 cities seized by the Xiongnu, 4 had now been recaptured, leaving only Xie, the most easily defended and hardest to attack. The pace of recovery was much faster than in my previous life. Because I've been running a clothing shop all along, my embroidery skills have become even better than before. Back in the day, when I embroidered a sachet for my brother, I spent a full half-month just to make the peony on it look lifelike. But now I can finish one in just a day. My clothing shop has gained quite a reputation, not only attracting apprentices from several neighboring cities but also welcoming a constant stream of customers every day. It even managed to draw the attention of petty thieves. A shop assistant quietly informed me that a suspicious-looking child had been loitering around the shop recently. Based on years of experience, he suspected the child was a thief. I looked in the direction he pointed and saw a little girl, not even waist-high to me, standing still in her beautiful clothes, her eyes filled with longing. The shop assistant asked, "Should I drive her out?" I shook my head. "No need, just keep an eye on her." The girl wandered around my shop all morning, looking at everything, but she didn't buy anything, nor did she steal anything. I thought the shop assistant had misjudged, and was about to dismiss it with a laugh, but unexpectedly, during the busiest noon rush when the crowd was thick and eyes were everywhere, she seized the moment, grabbed a sachet, and tried to make a run for it. But the shop assistant had already noticed something amiss, and the moment she revealed her true intentions, he didn't hesitate to catch her. The little girl was lifted up and scolded. "All those books of sages you've read have gone to the dogs, yet you're so skilled at sneaky, thieving tricks." Her face flushed with shame, and she burst into loud sobs. It's as if someone had bullied her. It seems quite normal for a 7 or 8-year-old girl to want a pretty sachet. When I was young, I also envied noble girls who could wear court beads and ornaments, swaying gracefully as they walked. Father never bought me these things, but fortunately, I had a good elder sister. Seeing her cry so pitifully, I shook my head. Forget it, let her down. When the shop assistant released her, she still clung tightly to the sachet, a few tears hanging on her dark lashes, ready to fall but not quite dropping. If you truly like this sachet, I can give it to you. I tapped her forehead gently and said softly, but I can't let you think that stealing comes with rewards. You work as my bookkeeper for one day, and the sachet will be your payment. How about that? The little girl sniffled and eagerly agreed. Don't worry, shopkeeper, my teacher says I'm very good at arithmetic. I curved my lips into a smile, thinking to myself that her character education seemed somewhat lacking. Perhaps the teacher just isn't capable enough. Gradually, the sun set in the west, and the night swallowed the last rays of twilight. Tired birds returned to their nests. And the cooking smoke rising from the blue-tiled roofs stretched into thin, dark wisps. The laborious, having toiled all day, began hurrying home to where their evening meals were already prepared. The little girl, holding the sachet, bowed to me respectfully in front of the shop as she took her leave. Thank you, shopkeeper. She hadn't lied to me, her calculations were indeed quite good. I had only intended to let her do some odd jobs, but unexpectedly, she had truly been of help. You don't have to thank me, this is the wages you deserve. Just remember, you mustn't do such things again in the future like you did today. The little girl nodded heavily, her small face both serious and adorable. I gently pinched the chubby part of her cheek. By the way, what do you want to use the sachet for? To wear it yourself or to give it to someone? She caressed the exquisite peony on the sachet with great care, her big eyes glistening with tears. I want to give it to my teacher. The teacher has been teaching us for a year now. Knowing our family is poor, he charges very little for tuition, yet he clearly needs the money himself. The teacher has been blind in both eyes all along, which already made life difficult for him. Recently, he accidentally broke his leg. The barefoot doctor said the inflammation from his wound has caused a high fever that won't subside. If we wait a few more days, he might not make it. The little girl began to sob. He has nothing aside from that long gown he wears. There's only that half of a sachet, mended over and over, that he carries at his waist every day. It was as if fate had its own designs. I stood there in a daze, caught completely off guard as this chance-met child brought me news of an old acquaintance. The embroidery pattern on the sachet you made looks just like the ones in your shop. I wanted to give it to my teacher, hoping it would bring him some joy before he leaves. She looked up and saw my tear-streaked face, completely stunned. Shopkeeper, why are you crying? I couldn't stop crying, sobbing uncontrollably. Where does your teacher live? Please, quickly take me there. Any later, I'm afraid it'll be too late. The best doctor in the city followed me. And I followed the little girl, both of us trudging through the muddy path, struggling with every step. The borderland bathed in moonlight, 10,000 households' lights extinguished. In the profound silence, I seemed to hear once more the flute my brother played for me long ago. A winding melody of Folding the Willow Branch drifted through the moonlight, along the bumpy road, and into the heart of a wanderer thousands of miles from home. During these days away from the capital, had he thought of home many times? They arrived at the dilapidated wooden hut. Pushing the door open, he saw a gaunt young man lying on a straw mat, frowning in discomfort and groaning. Hearing the noise, he stopped groaning, forced a slight smile, and with all his strength, spoke. You're here to see the master again. Don't worry, he'll be completely better after a few more days of rest. But everyone could tell it was a lie. The young man's face was deathly pale. His clothes soaked with cold sweat from the pain, his eyes were vacant, his calf severely swollen, wrapped haphazardly in white bandages. The physician quickly unloaded the herbal medicine chest from his back and took out a row of slender silver needles. Oh no, this can't be delayed any longer. Hearing this unfamiliar voice, Pei Xingji froze, struggling to sit up. Who dares to break into my home? Brother, it's me. I burst into tears. I am Chowning, your sister Pei Chowning. He seemed as if struck by lightning, instantly frozen in place. Chowning, how could you be here? My brother sat up, his hands groping helplessly in the air. Ignoring the pain in his leg, he endured the cold sweat as he searched for me everywhere. Of course I came to find you. They all said you were dead, but I never saw your body. I couldn't accept it. I quickly stepped forward, took his hand, and tears fell onto the back of it. Be good now, don't move anymore. The doctor needs to apply the needles. Once you're better, we'll go back to the capital together. Back to the capital. My brother's lifeless eyes blinked in vain. He clearly smiled, yet 2 clear tears fell. I must still be dreaming. To dream that Chowning is coming to take me back to the capital. I just miss her too much. He had already dreamed 1,000 dreams. The dream was too beautiful. often startling him awake with overwhelming joy, but upon waking, he would find himself with nothing once more. After many such times, happiness became like the moon reflected in water or flowers in a mirror. It's not a dream, it's all real. I sobbed until my whole body felt weak, my voice trembling uncontrollably. Brother, I've really come to take you home. The moonlight was like silver. I brought people to carry my brother back to the mansion in the city from the dilapidated wooden house. Then ordered my close attendant to quickly send a message to Murong-Ching. If he can't come back, then at least send for the military doctor. But before the first light of dawn, Murong-Ching, Ji Yusheng, and his brother's former comrades had already galloped back on swift horses. Recapturing Xiari is a matter of great importance that requires careful planning. Recently, the army has been drilling soldiers, with no battles underway and everything calm. We all rushed back as soon as we heard the news, surrounded by them. My brother lying on the bed to recuperate from his injuries couldn't see, but he could feel the lingering fierce aura emanating from these men who had fought on the battlefield. He smiled slightly, cupped his hands toward them, and said calmly, "I'm afraid I've given you all a laugh. I never thought I'd be in such a wretched state when we met again." Murong-Ching lifted her head, holding back her tears. "Don't talk nonsense. It's just good to have you back." Ji Yusheng stared at my brother, unable to speak for a long time. Unlike the others, he had truly been separated from his close friend for several years. He had genuinely believed that Pei Xingji was dead, and now, suddenly reunited, the joy in his heart was beyond words. Being alive is what matters most, everything else is insignificant. Hearing his voice, my brother said in surprise, "Brother Ji Yu, you've also come to the borderlands." Ji Yusheng smiled, "Indeed. I never thought I'd one day be on the front lines myself." He drew out his tone. "I've been here for a year now, and I've accomplished quite a lot." Well, it's true, after 3 days apart, one should look at a person with new eyes. The men chatted and laughed, and before long, they were all crying together. I curved the corner of my lips, leaving the room to them, and went alone to the kitchen to cook porridge. They had traveled all night and must be hungry. Everyone had stayed up all night. After having their meal, they sat for a while longer, then one by one took their leave, saying they would go catch up on sleep and return later. Murong-Ching, however, did not leave and continued to keep my brother company. After all, this house belongs to him and me, and he can't go anywhere else. We slowly talked through everything that had happened over the past year. When I heard that 4 cities had been recaptured, my brother couldn't hide his joy. "Marvelous, Brother Murong," he smiled, his eyes and brows softening. "No, I should call you General Murong now." "No need." Murong-Ching's ears turned red. "Ji Xing, you can just call me brother-in-law." "All right, bro." My brother nodded halfway, then suddenly realized something was wrong. He slammed the table in anger. "Murong-Ching, what did you just have me call you? Brother-in-law? When did you become my brother-in-law? I entrusted my little sister to you, but not in this way." "Murong-Ching, you." I swallowed hard and mustered the courage to step in front of Murong-Ching. "Brother, I was the one who asked him to marry me. We got married a year ago, and now we are living in perfect harmony, very happily." When he heard that I was the one who wanted to marry, my brother choked back a curse stuck in his throat. He abruptly changed the subject. "You are truly a perfect match." Murong-Ching laughed, tightly holding my hand, and called out clearly, "Thank you, Brother Xingji, for your blessing." My brother held his forehead, gave a vague response, and waved us away with utter exhaustion. All right, go out, all of you out, let me catch my breath for a moment." That night, I shared a bed with Murong-Ching, gazing at the man's striking features beside me. For a moment it felt as if I had returned to our wedding night at the general's residence. Back then, I used to look at him the same way, only he slept on the floor, and I lay on the soft bed. Murong-Ching pressed my head against his chest. "Can't sleep." I felt his firm chest and my heart began to wander. A little. The man thought for a moment. "Should I tell you some stories from the military camp then?" He wanted to imitate the past, but I refused with a smile. "Forget it. I have something else to ask you." Looking directly at Murong-Ching, I spoke word by word. "Did you already like me long ago?" Every moment spent with him over the past year made me doubt this matter. He treated me so well, making me understand the feeling of being cherished. This affection doesn't seem like something that could arise from fulfilling someone else's request. Hearing me mention this, Murong-Ching was momentarily stunned. After a long while, he rested his chin on the top of my head and admitted directly, "Yes, I've been fond of you for a long time. I was once your classmate, but you probably didn't know about this." Murong-Ching was once my classmate. When I heard this, I couldn't help but feel surprised. "I don't think I've ever seen you at the academy," he he smiled and said, I never attended the academy either. The first time I saw you was at the dean's place. At that time, Murong-Qing had a minor injury on his right arm and couldn't wield a sword or hold a blade for several months, with nothing else to do. He was summoned by the emperor to study at Dongguan Academy. The dean has a friendship with my mother, so she made an exception and took me as her student, but she never demanded much from my studies, just told me to focus on recovering from my injuries. He gave a radiant smile. She has 3,000 disciples, and I'm probably the worst one among them. Every day at noon when you went to the dean's place to practice calligraphy, I happened to be sleeping in the side room. At first when I saw you, I was just puzzled. How could someone be so fond of studying? You were studying hard before I fell asleep, and you were still studying hard when I woke up. When the dean was there, you were meticulous, and even after she left, you remained just as serious and never slacked off. The way you study is truly beautiful. At that time, it had only been 2 years since Murong-Qing's parents passed away, and he had not yet emerged from the pain. He longed to go to the front lines, to defeat the Xiongnu and avenge his family, but he was too young, his skills were not yet refined, and his uncle the emperor would not permit it. The confusion and emptiness in his heart had nowhere to go. Every day, aside from admiring fish and teasing birds, he would go to the dean's place on time to sleep, and hiding in the side room, secretly watching that hard-working girl. One day, I saw you copying a single phrase 100 times while practicing your calligraphy. Flowing water does not strive to be first, but strives to flow endlessly. Majestic mountains do not strive for height, but strive to stretch for thousands of miles. It was at that moment that I fell for you, beyond all control. I felt a mix of emotions. You just hid there, never making a sound. I didn't dare disturb you. Murong-Qing sighed, recalling the past with a gentle smile. When you asked me to marry you, I was overjoyed, but seeing your swollen face, I felt furious. You said we would only be in a false marriage, and my heart was filled with immense disappointment. Yet, I also felt that being able to help you escape the Pei family was already my greatest fortune. Otherwise, we would have remained two strangers who never knew each other. He was right. In our past life, we were two people with no connection at all. I lived in the Marquis's residence. While he was stationed at the border, I only knew of him through others' words. But this life is different. I have become his wife, sharing the same bed with him. In the future, I even hope to be buried in the same tomb with him. I held his face in my hands, tears welling in my eyes. Did we owe each other a cup of nuptial wine? Murong-Qing's eyes grew moist. Understood. He kissed my temple with deep emotion, his robes half undone. The usually formidable general was nothing more than a love-struck youth in the bedchamber. The red curtains held a warm fragrance, mandarin ducks entwined their necks, and the night was spent with little sleep. My brother's leg injury healed faster than his eye condition. His eye disease was contracted during their previous breakout from Xiongnu territory. The Xiongnu chased them to the riverbank, leaving them with no way out, so the group had no choice but to jump in. The current was swift. And after being struck on the back of the head by a floating log, his vision gradually darkened. Using his last bit of strength, my brother clung to the floating log and then let it carry him along. When he woke up on the shore, he couldn't see anything. At first, he thought it was just dark. But later he realized he had gone blind. The military doctor said the blindness was due to a blood clot in the back of his head. As long as he received daily acupuncture treatments, his vision would return once the clot dissolved. After recovering from his injuries, his elder brother was in no hurry to return to the capital. He said, "If I am to return home, it must be in triumph." He donned his armor once more and returned to the battlefield, serving as a military strategist, just as spirited and determined as in the old days. Why should a man not carry the Wu hook to reclaim the 50 states beyond the mountains? As I watched them leave the city for the military camp once again, one thing became certain to me: the day of their triumphant return must be near. Extra chapter. In this life, the triumphant return of the army came a full 6 months earlier than in the previous life. The Xiongnu suffered successive defeats, retreating thousands of miles away, and would not dare to invade again for at least 70 years. The emperor was overjoyed and personally left the capital to welcome them. Rewards fell like snowflakes. Just as in the previous life, Murong-Qing was still granted the title of Duke of Zhen. When the title was announced, I breathed a sigh of relief, and Ji Yusheng did the same. Having been tempered by the battlefield, he and Murong-Qing had forged a life-and-death bond, and the initial hostility between them had long since vanished. When I entered the palace for the victory banquet, I saw my sister among the officials who came to greet me. She wore a jade crown and a deep purple official robe, smiling gracefully at me. After the army returned to the capital, everyone praised Minister Pei for his good fortune. Having 3 sons, each outstanding in their own way, he had mistreated me for many years, and I would no longer acknowledge him as my father. He could not borrow even a shred of influence from my father-in-law, the Duke of Jeanne, after her sister passed the imperial examination to become a female official. She persuaded their biological mother to divorce him, and together they left the estate to establish their own household, even changing their surname. My brother returned from the dead, was granted an official title and rank, and just like my sister, he moved our mother out of the estate. When the news of his death had first arrived, our father's actions had already shattered any lingering illusions he might have held about him. Those who are heartless and ungrateful will ultimately end up abandoned by all. As for mother, she now lives in my brother's residence and is doing quite well. He hired the best physicians to treat her, and over the years, her hysteria has completely healed. She is no longer as stubborn and obsessive as she used to be. Every time she sees me, there's always a look of guilt on her face. She's tried several times to seek reconciliation, but I just smile and let it pass, never agreeing. I don't hate her, but I won't forgive her either. In this life, as mother and daughter, we don't have much of a bond. From now on, it's enough to just watch each other from a distance.